Moshe Daniel Block got his degree of naturopathic medicine from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in Toronto in 2000. Dr. Block then went on to complete the homeopathic master clinician course with Louis Klein, FS Hom. Is that a person?
No, that's like a credential.
Oh,
like,
that's another.
Like BSc or like.
See, for the people watching and listening to this, there are so many credentials listed for Dr. Moshe that I just glossed over them because I didn't want to sound stupid.
It doesn't matter. No,
and then this other guy, what does FS Hom mean? What is that?
It's something homeopathic.
Okay, so it's
I'm
another
not sure
homeopathic
FS,
thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that was in 2003. Dr. Moshe is the author of The Revolution of Naturopathic Medicine, Remaining True to Our Philosophy, which he published in 2004. It's a book about the philosophy and practice of naturopathic medicine, and also holistic counseling, introducing the Vis Dialogue, which I've had the pleasure of experiencing.
Excellent.
Published in 2016, a book about the breakthrough healing method uniting the worlds of mind, body, medicine, and psychology. He became a vitalist of the Naturopathic Medicine Institute in 2018. Dr. Moshe has deepened and evolved his breakthrough mind-body medicine technique, the Vis Dialogue, over 25 years of practice, helping thousands of patients achieve life-changing results. He began training doctors in 2012 and has since created his full certification program in holistic counseling to help practitioners be able to reproduce the amazing results that he gets with the Vis Dialogue. And you can find out more about that at the link in the show notes. Dr. Moshe personally faced and overcame a rare autoimmune disease, myasthenia gravis. Is that how you pronounce it?
Myasthenia, yeah.
Myasthenia gravis, using the same medicine he now practices and teaches. He is available for personal one-on-one healing programs for tackling difficult cases of chronic illness and suffering of all kinds. The program helps the person heal by finding the kingdom in you, and you can find more about Find the Kingdom in You in the show notes. Okay, so I'm going to throw one out, the first question and series of topics I want to explore, completely unrelated to everything in your bio that I know you're also interested in, related to, let's say, healing technology and technology that helps create coherence in the environment and you as an individual. So I heard you talk with Topher and then a couple other people about the pyramid on your property that you have. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, sure. I created a pyramid using several different, like a conglomeration of several different techs.
Okay.
So, I heard you with Dr. What was that gentleman's name? From
Stephen Young.
Stephen Young. Love that podcast, by the way. I was really geeked out on that.
I figured if you were going to look into some of the podcasts I've done, you'd gravitate towards that one, being that it was focused on alchemy.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Because you can always pick up little gems,
Right.
So whatever, like by observing nature, the alchemist learns from nature, and what we learn the most from is what makes things grow well. Plants, particular, are easy to observe. Harder to observe animals and minerals. Mm-hmm. Plants, you could see their growth, like after an abundant rainfall with a thunderstorm water.
And they're fixed in one place, whereas animals are moving about, and that becomes quite difficult.
Yeah, it becomes quite difficult. And how are you going to measure? Like, okay, maybe you could, the rabbit gained like 2.2 grams in the last week instead of whatever. It becomes complex. So one of the emerging, and it's kind of an ancient tech, but it's emerging in today's peoplehood. Like, people are embracing this, is electroculture.
Yeah.
So electroculture taps into a principle of uniting the heavens with the earth electrically. So the heavens, the sky is a positive potential, and the earth is earth grounded. And you get this potential difference, which causes the higher potential you have, the more movement of energy occurs. So that's one of the first principles of the pyramid. You sit inside of a pyramid. I welded rebar, so it's iron. The iron principle is also very interesting. You sit inside of it, and my head, or anybody who sits inside, has like a sort of like a crown made out of also of iron, that is connected to a wire that goes up to an antenna, which is 24 feet in the air.
Is there a significance of the 24 feet specifically?
No, it's just how high I was able to get. The higher you go, the more challenging it becomes in terms of just like the physical design. Like, how do you keep your tower up there without like, because it gets very windy
so because there's an electroculture rod at the top of the pyramid then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of antenna, you could literally take an antenna for a TV, and then you just want to have that grounded. Well, depending on what your application is, but that goes right to the head.
Got it.
And then I'm sitting. There's like a mat, and which is earth grounded. So that's the first principle of that. The second principle is the pyramid itself, which is healing. I mean, if you just sat in a pyramid and did meditation, you'd get a lot out of it. Right?
I sat underneath one of those. I believe they're made out of some type of copper, like the copper pyramids that are pretty big that you can sit under, that has some type of mineral or rock that's underneath it. I forget what it is, but I definitely felt that. Like you feel like just a subtle energy moving throughout your body.
Totally. I love copper for the pyramid, but I couldn't I 3D printed the corners. And I 3D printed in whatever it was, PL. I forget what the material is. It's like recycled corn material, you know, like the extra after they pull everything out of it. And PLA, that's what it's called. But that doesn't conduct the electricity, so it was causing these rifts in the energy field. So you can't weld copper either. You can, but it's a little bit more complex. So I use the iron to have this continuous electric base and you know, going up as well.
So was the intention of this pyramid more environmental? Because typically when you think of electroculture, you're thinking of pulling in the ether for the growth of plants or something like that, right? So obviously you're talking about this antenna, this electroculture antenna was connected to this wire that's connected to this iron helmet sort of thing that you wear. So it's more for you. It's not creating coherence in the environment, although I'd imagine because it's a pyramid shape, it is by
the
proxy.
Plants within the proximate location are mental.
Really?
They go crazy. They bloom incredibly. Like I had 3 growths of the stinging nettle within like just a couple of months. So it would grow full, I'd cut it, and then it would grow full again, and I'd cut it again, and it would just keep growing.
Do you think that's both the electroculture antenna and the pyramid working together for the plants too?
100%.
Okay.
And I also have a tower of power, which is another electric. It sounds funny, I know. It's like, you know, Grayskull, Legend of. It's something funny sounding, but it's actually quite true. It's a tower of power. It's made out of paramagnetic materials.
Okay.
And the paramagnetism was basically brought forward by Philip S. Callahan, who was a radio operator in the Army and discovered like certain principles of the like having the antennas for radio in the I think it's the Second World War or the First World War.
It would have been the First World War was right around when radio waves or radios rolled out. So,
right. Which was one of the pandemics. I know you're into that stuff, so I got you. Absolutely. So he discovered these principles of radio, electrical magnetism, and he studied in Ireland these very tall towers that were made out of basalt stone. And basalt is paramagnetic. So there's 3 types of magnetism. There's what we're most commonly, what we talk about mostly is ferromagnetism. Is you take a magnet, it sticks to your fridge. That's ferromagnetism. And then there's diamagnetism, which is a weak magnetic field, which is created in the opposite direction of a magnetic field. And paramagnetism is the same as diamagnetism, but the opposite polarity. So it attracts the magnetic field weakly. So paramagnetic and diamagnetic are a yin and a yang, right? And my pyramid is made of both those materials.
Okay.
And the pyramids of Giza are made of both materials, paramagnetic, which was in the marble that was used, or is it granite? Pink granite. That's what is used on the pyramids, and then a limestone, which is diamagnetic. So all plants ground easily, and trees ground the diamagnetic, but the paramagnetic is less available. So to make a tower of it, which is what the tower power is made out of paramagnetic material, it channels in this more positive form of the magnetism. and the plants thrive off of it.
Is that what we would call like positive ions in that way? Is that it's channeling it, or is that a separate concept?
I think it's a separate concept.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because we receive negative charge, negative ions from the earth.
Yes.
But from my understanding, that is also based in where you're located and whether the actual soil beneath you is paramagnetic or diamagnetic. And I could be completely wrong on that. Though.
Yes, I'm not really sure if there's a parallel there. There could be. It's open for research.
Yeah, someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. I could be totally wrong.
No problem. But you can see trees growing right out of a big basalt, a chunk of basalt stone. And there's no soil there. And the roots are exposed. And they're growing happily. Because the paramagnetic brings a lot. Wow. So Tower Power, the pyramid itself, the walls are made out of basalt. I use basalt for the paramagnetic principle in the pyramid. I made concrete, and I also poured plasterite, which is the diamagnetic material. Mm-hmm. So it has the yin and yang, and all these different principles that we talked about.
So when you're experiencing both of these like types of magnetism at the same time, what effect does that create for you and your body? Obviously you see the results in the plants all around you, but for you as a human being,
it's just like, when you go into meditation and that feeling of like, whoop. Yeah. When you just go in, whoop. So as soon as I close the door is so heavy because it's made out of concrete and plasterite. It's so heavy that I built a winch. So so I close the door, boom. And when it closes, I just go, whoop. Just like enter right into the space.
Whoa.
So that's the effect. And also I would say that it's, it's healing, it's cohesive. There's a subtle part of it too. Yeah, there's lots of it, but there's a whole bunch going on at the same time too. Also definitely aligned to the north. Uh-huh. I'm sitting north.
Okay.
And the sides are parallel with the north. That's important with any pyramid. You have to be earth, the grid aligned. You have to be facing north, right?
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
And what is just because I'm curious, what is the relationship? Let me back up. I'd imagine you're sitting north because the like magnetism of the earth, you're taking that into consideration, right?
Yeah. There's also an alchemical secret there.
Okay. So yeah, share, please.
Okay. This is a big secret.
Okay. Well, you're saying it publicly now, so it's a big deal. This is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So, okay. So, the alchemy is all about balance of positive and negative, yin and yang, sol and luna, right?
Yeah.
But it's not really about the two, it's about the one that they make in the center. Of course, it is about the two as well. But the child is born from the love making of the sun and the moon. The child principle is a principle of stillness. There's no movement in the child. It's a perfect energy. There is a split in this earth reality. In the higher worlds, I don't think this is accurate to say, but in our world, polarity seeks union. So it has a yearning for togetherness. Mm. So it's in motion. Electricity is in motion. But the actual union of the two is in stillness. The North Star, Polaris, is the still point of the motion of the stars. It represents the stillness. And so a tremendous energy is channeled from right that point. So any device that we have, if we align with it, and we align ourselves, like if you want to meditate, you align with it, you open yourself up, you're breathing in the energies that are coming from that area, that location, and you're dancing, basically. Wow. It's good stuff right there.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah, I saw that hit hard for you.
Yeah,
it's cool. Good. It's good.
That was really cool. Thank you for that secret. Thank you for that wisdom.
You're very welcome.
This is a loaded question. In what way did you come up with the materials and all that went into the pyramid? Because obviously that had to have been a ton of studying on so many levels, both physically and metaphysically. Yeah. So what went into creating that?
That's a great question. Years and years of research, years of experimentation with different materials. I've also built orgone pyramids. Orgone, the principles of orgone. This is not orgone per se. It's not accumulation, different layers. It's just like the paramagnetic and the magnetic. So I did a lot of research. I was inspired by the pyramids of Giza, the paramagnetic and the diamagnetic. I also recognized that the diamagnetic and the paramagnetic is at play with the growth of plants. Growth makes alchemists happy. When we see things that make, stuff grow, we get happy. And here's another secret. It's not, secrets are funny because they're not. Some are very occult and very mysterious and require deep penetration of study and all that stuff. But some are just like low-hanging fruit right there to be picked, but we haven't necessarily thought about that, or you didn't look at that. So one of the secrets of alchemy, it comes in the equinoxes, right? The two most abundant times of the year of plant growth is in the spring equinox, following the spring equinox, and right around the time of the fall equinox, actually right before and slightly after. And what does equinox mean from the Latin? It means night equal night, which means the night and the day are equal, which means that the principles of the opposites are equal.
Whoa.
So that's another time when great amounts of energy are channeled into the earth, is at the equinoxes. And we've just passed an equinox. That energy is still really ripe right now. And the moon that just came was like a tremendous moon right at the equinox. I was like really vibing with that one. So so that you'll see in the spring, everything flowers, the animals are all rutting with each other, like the sex vibe, creativity is happening. Same thing happens. There's another flowering period. So I have like rose bushes, and they blossom in the spring, then they die off in the summer, no roses, and then the roses come back in the fall. It's a little less in the fall than it is in the spring. Spring is the top. Yeah.
Wow. Dropping some bombs right now.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, this
fun
is great.
Stuff.
I actually had a question about the Pyramid of Giza. So what do you think the intention for them was? Obviously, you have the paramagnetic and diamagnetic, as you've learned in your research. But what was the actual intention? Because a lot of people give their different takes on what the intention of the pyramids was, whether it was like a death chamber, whether it was like an afterlife sort of ritualistic chamber, like helping carry a soul into the afterlife, sitting in it for healing. I've heard so many different takes. What have you come to understand the intention was?
I can just say like a hunch with it, right? Like it's not my forte, but I think it's regeneration. I think like the pharaoh, the king, whatever, would go in there and have regeneration. There's the sarcophagus, what they might consider for like the body, but I think they would actually lie within that. And there was this tremendous concentration of forces of energy. There's a story, I don't know if you know this story, but this blew me away, of the guy that kind of snuck in and like he waited till the guards left. They checked and he was like went around the corner and they left and they locked the whole place up, and he was alone at night. And he snuck into the king's chamber, and he lay inside of the sarcophagus made of that stone. I don't know if it's onyx or something. Do you know what the material is? I forget. And he said he heard this being approaching. It was like boom, boom, boom. Like the whole universe was echoing with the steps of this being.
Whoa.
Massive echoing. And then he realized it was his heartbeat.
Whoa, that's so cool.
And he knew, like he got scared because he heard his heart resonating inside of a space that was unfathomable to him. And he realized that he had to let go. He let go, and he fell asleep at some point. He woke up in the morning, and he was covered in a white powder.
Covered in what?
A white powder.
A white powder. Whoa.
Manna from heaven, maybe? Some kind of manifestation of a salt.
Yeah.
So there might have been something like that also with the pyramids, like a manifestation for alchemical purposes.
Incredible.
The Egyptians were quite advanced in that art.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's mysteries there too. Things that we.
Yeah, I wonder if So like yours, you had this tower on the top that is pulling in the ether, right? This electroculture device.
Yes.
I wonder if theirs was more focused on the capstone, because a lot of people talk about the capstone, if that was serving that
gold.
purpose. Yeah.
It was gold, yeah.
Yeah, or if there was also the gold capstone in addition to some like some type of ether accumulator, orgone accumulator that had mercury inside of it, because I know a lot of them did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wonder. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating topic. I'd love to like. There's quite a bit of gaps in my understanding and knowledge of the pyramids of Giza. I just know pyramids are really cool, and like you sit in them, and there's these power points, and you can even generate electricity with a pyramid.
Yeah, have you tried that with yours?
I have tried, and I didn't succeed. I think there's certain things I was missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about your Moe-Joe Cell?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I want to get into all like my and not that the other stuff isn't interesting, but I want to hear this side of you first, and then transition into the healing stuff. You're a wealth of knowledge on a number of things. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So it ends up being like really boring. It's all the same principles, masculine and feminine.
It's not though. It's so cool. It's incredible.
I'm joking.
You could say that about reality though too. It's like, oh, it's so boring. It's just so masculine boring. And feminine principles at work all the time.
Yeah. But because, what I realize is that like anything that has a simple universal principle has so many applications and such a depth of like so much to learn from it. Uh-huh. So we start with the simple principle and you're like, oh, boring. That's so easy. Like positive and negative. Okay, now I know the whole universe in 2 seconds. So the Moe-Joe Cell is built on the same principle. I learned about the Joe cell many years ago.
What is the Joe cell?
The Joe cell, there was a guy named Joe Booker in Australia who basically took, he had pipes within pipes of iron, and he filled it with water, and he put it in his car, and he charged it a certain way, and it gave off an energy that ran the car. Even when the electrical connection to the battery was removed, the Joe cell continued to produce the energy that he could run his car without any fuel.
Incredible.
Fuelless.
Is that dude still alive?
Yes.
Incredible.
But they got to him.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
He started to mint stuff, and it became very shrouded. Yeah. And I try to rack my brains of how to do that exactly. And I've gotten results of like improved performance. Actually, Topher and I, God bless Topher. He's the man. He's the man that brought us together. And I'm so grateful for him. Yeah. Topher and I did a trip with a couple of friends from, we were in Florida to Texas, to Austin, Texas, actually. Wow. And I remember we were in Barton Springs and everything. Just really cool. It was a great drive. So I think we got a slight improvement of fuel mileage, but the car was a Land Rover. It was very buoyant. Like Land Rovers are like driving tanks. They have like two transmissions, are very heavy, but it handled like a motorcycle. It was just light on its feet.
Interesting.
So there's a feel that happens, and there was like some weird like anomalies with the electrical systems of the car as well. So I have had experiences of improved mileage, improved performance, and you feel like the car just responds to your will better. And there's things I don't understand about the Moe-Joe Cell. There's a mystery there. But the principle, so Joe had these pipes. And as soon as I learned about it, I started to receive these downloads of a design, very simple design to make it spherical.
Okay.
So I went, because the sphere has a much more potential for a perfect field overlap.
Okay.
So
is that because of the toroidal nature of a field? Is it like the shape of a field? Is that relevant?
Well, I see it more as a sphere, like literally spherical.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like so that a field, right? This is the top view of a torus, right? Or that logo right there.
Right.
So is it that a sphere is more conducive to having this field element at play because the field element itself is a torus shape?
I don't know about that. Okay. I think it's possible.
Okay. Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do know what you're asking. But the thing is that the toroid has certain linear nature. Like it stretches out more on the horizontal plane than on the vertical plane.
Yep.
But the sphere is equal.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's no orientation in a sphere.
Yeah.
It goes all around.
Right.
So, okay. So the Moe-Joe Cell is made up of four spheres, a 2-inch sphere, a 3-inch, 4-inch, and 5-inch. The positive of the battery is applied to the outside and the negative to the inside. And I've played with reversing the polarity.
In what way? How are you applying this?
So basically, like with a battery, or you could have like an a bridge rectifier with plugging into the mains with like a capacitor to smooth out the ripple, and you just put you want direct current, and you would apply. So basically, the field is not perfect because you have to run an electrode to the inside one. So you have to have a hole in the other spheres to get this to pass through.
So it's like nested spheres, right? So you're talking like the 2-inch
like
to 3-inch
Russian dolls.
Yeah, to Russian. Okay, Russian dolls.
Yeah,
is there any fluid or anything between the spheres?
Water.
Like is it holding them in direct proportion? So for example, the 2-inch diameter sphere is not rubbing up against the third.
Yeah, they have to be electrically isolated.
Okay,
that's key.
So it has to be isolated, and you're doing that with this water.
Yeah, and I also have spacers. I have like nylon spacers.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So so the negative goes to the inner one, and that creates a negative field, and the positive goes on the outside. Okay. The two inner plates, so the 3-inch and the 4-inch, provide what's called the neutral plate. It creates a capacitance effect, which augments the field. Like every time you have a neutral plate, instead of diminishing, even though they're further apart, you're augmenting some aspect of the cell. It's not, I think this goes beyond the physical parameter into electromagnetic, etheric, something along those lines.
Well, I'm thinking of it in terms of with this third and fourth, and the negative on one side, positive on the other. Obviously, that creates a potential energy, right?
Yeah.
In terms of fourth phase water, right? Because
totally.
Fourth phase water, the negative charge on the inside, creating this ring that is the exclusion zone, where that's positively charged, and any impurities are pushed to the edge, which creates a capacitor, which light and sound and certain exposure to natural things help increase the negative charge and expand the exclusion zone.
That's very cool. Very, very well said. I want to add another thing to it. So water is diamagnetic. Mm-hmm. And I also use an element in the very center, which is bismuth, the metal bismuth, my favorite metal.
Okay.
I mean, I'm partial to gold as well. And I like platinum and silver. I like the precious metals too. Okay. Bismuth has so many incredible properties, which I mean we can go into, but I
want to go into it. Let's do it.
Okay, well, we'll just talk about one of its main properties. It's diamagnetic.
Okay.
So now this is a secret of the Moe-Joe cell, and I think also the Joe cell, but the field is more perfect in the Moe-Joe cell than in the Joe cell, and it's been critiqued that it's too perfect in the Moe-Joe cell, that there's no work to be done. There's no out of balance that the cell is trying to create, trying to restore balance. And that's what helps it do work.
Okay.
Right? So, but I don't mind because one of the applications of the Moe-Joe cell is for consciousness and healing.
So you want the stillness rather than the work anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I have gotten the cell to the point where it's in a fish bowl, like a gallon fish bowl with the hole drilled in the bottom. I have the negative coming in and the positive wire is just out through the top. And I lay my hands on the glass. I'm meditating. It's like, whoa, I get drawn into another dimensional reality like that because the field is so strong. And so this is a secret of the Moe-Joe cell, I think. All right, you got bismuth in the middle, and if you have water, it's okay too. But bismuth, the power of its diamagnetism is higher than water. I forget the units, but it's like 20 or 18 or something, and water is like lower, much lower. So imagine what is diamagnetic? It's creating a weak magnetic field in the opposite direction of a magnetic field. Mm-hmm. So bismuth is surrounded. Where can it create its magnetic field? It can't. Mm-hmm. It's surrounded. It's trapped. The only thing it could do is punch a hole into the other side of reality and open up the field to the 0 point.
Oh my God.
That's how I think that works.
Holy crap. I had no clue where you were going to go with that. Whoa.
Yeah, man.
So you'd also brought up iron because you use iron in your pyramid at your house, and you also use it in the Moe-Joe Cell too, right? So what is the significance of iron? Because we overlooked that one. Yeah.
So iron obviously carries the principle of fire. It's ruled by Mars in alchemy or that.
Yeah.
And it is one of the metals that a poor person could use to replace the sulfur of gold. So, I mean, that's from the alchemical perspective. From the, what are we dancing in this world of like 0 point fields and alternative energies and free energy? It just, while it's ferromagnetic, that might have something to do with it. I'm not really sure. I'm more like aware of the alchemical significance of it. And it's readily available. It's not too expensive. It's easy to form, and it's strong. And you can get it to be like when you're actually, this is an important point. The metal that I use in the Moe-Joe Cell is 316L. L is low carbon, and you can get it to be non-sticky to a magnet, non-magnetic. That's what we actually want. So we don't want the ferromagnetic quality there.
Okay.
We want it to be non-magnetic, so it doesn't interfere.
Got it.
Yeah,
because it would interfere with the other things going on.
With the other things going on.
So what is the purpose of it in the Moe-Joe Cell then?
Well, it's honestly it's stainless.
Okay.
And it doesn't corrode with electricity. Like copper.
Where is it used in the Moe-Joe Cell is what I'm asking. Like what component?
The spheres.
The spheres
are made out of it. Yeah.
Okay.
And like if you use copper, you'd get this beautiful field, but then it would like erode immediately. Electricity applied underwater with copper, the copper just erodes immediately. And there's other metals that could be potential there. Like you might use gold, but it would be pretty pricey. I mean, it probably costs like $50,000.
Yeah, let's help you crowdfund for that one.
One day
get a Moe-Joe Cell made of gold. That'd be incredible.
One day.
Yeah.
There's one other point I just want to tie in. So the inner field is created by the negative of the call it the female. The female is housed in the middle, and the masculine is on the outside. But it has the same point where it creates its neutral center. So we have both fields impacting the diamagnetic material in the middle, both forcing a opposite field, both opening up to the 0 point, creating a union of opposites of the positive and the negative, which is the definition of balanced positive of the 0 point field of the ether. I'm not sure if ether is the right word there, but we'll stick with it because I think there's a universality between these terms and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow. Incredible. So what was the Moe-Joe Cell invented for? What was the intention behind that?
Well, for both to like,
because you saw the Joe Cell first, right? And you're like, I want to make this into a spherical.
I have to say, that's a really good question. Nobody's asked me that. I have to say secretly, because outwardly it was like for like cars and stuff.
Right.
Like
well, that's why I'm asking, because like you're talking about it from a deep alchemical perspective at this point.
And that was the purpose. It was for consciousness.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Because the Joe Cell, like you're talking about a guy, which is really incredible, being able to run his car without having any fuel, things like this. That's incredible. But you went in a totally different direction with it.
I did. And so like secretly, like behind the scenes in Moshe's mind, it was this thing of to train my field to whisper to me about the union of opposites, which is hard for us to wrap our minds around because it's a higher principle. It's where we come from. We're more, that's closer to our true nature than the polarity is. And this kind of gets into the 4 worlds of Kabbalah and the 5 bodies of yoga and stuff like that. So we're in the physical world. The astral world is based on the principles of polarity. Scott, sorry, his name's not Scott. He is a Scot. What's his name?
Stephen Young.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Sorry, Steve, if you're listening. I love you, man.
That was great. That was great.
The Scot.
The Scot.
Yeah.
The true Scotsman.
Man. So he was talking about the principle of polarity. He worded it. He expressed himself very well. And I was like, this guy knows his stuff. I appreciated that. So the astral plane is this principle of opposites, but they unite as the child. The child world, the world of the child is the causal plane. You're familiar with that term, causal. It literally the cause of everything.
We have a causal body too, right?
We have a causal body because we are created in the image and likeness of that which is. And the causal body is incredibly, like, unfathomably high energy. So for me, everything is about the causal. Everything. The word thing is pertinent because there's also that which is beyond the thing level, which is the world of the absolute. In Kabbalah, it's Atzilut. And it's beyond anything. Buddha said everything is mind. But we're talking about everything that is a thing. That's a thought is a thing. Beyond the thing is the isness, and that's the highest world. But we are created, like we're also that which is, and beyond that which is created. Right. But the first manifest thing is the causal, and that's where the Christ sits, the first begotten Son. That's the Christian language. But what that means is the very first thing that is created by the union of opposites. It's very paradoxical because it's higher than the parents. Yeah. The child exists at a level higher than the parents. How is that possible?
But it necessitates the lower layer, for lack of a better term. It necessitates the lower layer for a creation of the higher and bringing it into physical reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Love it. So, yeah. So
can I comment on that real quick?
Yeah, please.
Because what that brings up in me is like this tendency amongst a lot of people who consider themselves to be, quote, spiritual.
Yes.
To, in some ways, overlook, for example, even like the lower chakras or like their physical nature, wanting to escape it, not wanting to be in it, wanting to ascend beyond it or transcend above it.
Yes.
And what you just said there is that we need this in order to facilitate pulling this down to another layer.
Absolutely. I don't think you could handle being in a physical body if you just like go up.
Yeah.
Or it wouldn't last long. Like there are some yogic masters who basically attained to these higher levels, but I don't think their physical vessel was capable, and they knew that they couldn't last.
Yeah.
One of their I don't remember the name of this master. It was a master at the higher level. I don't think he's a full spectrum master. He told his wife, I have to eat a lot. So he ate a lot. He says, when I say I don't want to eat anymore, I'm going to go. And one day he said he wasn't hungry, and she cried basically because she said, oh, he's going to go. And then a couple of days later he was gone because he had to eat. Like the physical body is called anamaya kosha in the Sanskrit. And that means food body. Like our body's literally made up of food. I think that's so funny. It makes me chuckle. What you just described is another topic that I wanted to get into. I'll just throw out this term right now, and then we could get into it now or later as you see fit. It's an error towards the Luciferin in the Rudolf Steiner term. So the Luciferin is to move into the spiritual and to deny the physical. So basically what that sounds like is that everything is unreal, and it's a half truth. Yeah. Like the physical is unreal. Yeah. Anything that is manifest, they would consider unreal, but then they deny its existence in the sense that because it's not who we really are, it should not be regarded in any way. I don't agree with that.
We're here for a reason. We're experiencing this for a reason. We're in the physical for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have a deep respect for the material plane because it's affording us something that we couldn't have without it. That the angels are kind of yearning for in a way because they don't know themselves as we do as separate. The physical matter makes us have an experience of individuality. So I get to know this guy as separate from the whole. Whereas in the angelic realms, they don't have that experience.
Right.
So it's a privilege, but it can get too far also towards the physical and the denial of the spirit. That's the Ahrimanic imbalance, which is a Rudolf Steiner term as well. Well, it's an ancient Persian term for a kind of like a negative entity deity type, but Rudolf Steiner, the way he paints the model, honestly, is probably one of the most intelligent things I've ever encountered in my journeying. So I want to talk with you about that. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, let's continue down the Steiner path for a little bit since we're on it.
Sure.
Yeah. Where would you like to go?
Well, it dovetails nicely. The Steiner path dovetails nicely into alchemy as well.
Okay.
And I think some people will appreciate where it leads because Steiner was a Rosicrucian, and I heard you talk about Rosicrucianism.
I have some weird stuff related to that too, not like bad weird, but like I was reading this book called I'll just say it. This is pretty amazing. I did not know Steiner was a Rosicrucian.
Neither did I until a few months ago, honestly.
Okay, so this book right here, The Red Lion, I was reading that, and I had been listening to one of Topher's episodes with Professor Longo where they were talking about the Byzantine Empire. And up to this point in the episode, they had only been discussing stuff related to the architecture of the Byzantine Empire and some things related to animatronics, basically like Tartarian-esque stuff, right? And it was really fascinating. And I had read earlier that day the name Christian Rosenkreutz. And that was my first time reading it and then reading about the Rosicrucians earlier that day. And then I go pick up back where I was in the episode with Topher, and he starts describing Christian Rosenkreutz and the Rosicrucians likely being the ones who helped create some of these structures, the Rosicrucian lineage, et cetera, et cetera,
and
et cetera.
The cool churches of Europe and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then I stopped mowing my backyard and went back to reading, and nowhere in the book, The Red Lion, do they talk about Rudolf Steiner or anything like that. But instantly in my head, I look at my wife and I go, where's our copy of How to Know Higher Worlds by Rudolf Steiner? As I'm reading The Red Lion and reading about the Rosicrucians, I had no clue that there was any relation to them. And I just said that to my wife, and she's like, I don't know why. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I need to read that. And then I go back and start mowing my front lawn and press play on the episode, and then Topher and Longo start bringing up Rudolf Steiner just after that. I was like, oh my goodness. So
that's cool.
I've not, is it dived into or dove into? I've not dived into Steiner's work as much as I'd like to, but yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but I thought that was really fascinating.
Well, I'm a naturopathic doctor, so during my naturopathic studies, I heard a lot about Steiner with like biodynamic farming, and then like Waldorf school and education of children. And so I was like, that guy's really cool. But I didn't realize how deep the level of intelligence was. I fell in love with Steiner like to a whole new level last summer when I was going through a terrifying experience of the threshold. So there's a threshold because right now we are like, you just experience yourself as Alec, and I experience myself as Moshe. But there's a moment in time, and you may already have had this experience, and others too, where you lose that identity and you merge with the one. And for me, it felt terrifying. I could get into details perhaps a little bit after.
Was it meditatively induced, or was it
meditatively? At times, it was medicine induced.
Okay,
but I'm so
like plant medicine induced.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was going to guess, is if it was like something to do with Bufo, which is technically an animal medicine. But I know that people have had this.
I like it. I like the idea, like the homeopathic remedy. I've given it to patients and stuff.
Okay.
But the substances on the planet, medicine, like I could take the smallest puff or the slightest drink, and it's like I'm on a freight train to there. And if I'm not ready to surrender, I got one foot on the gas, foot on the brakes, and that's not good for my nervous system.
No.
So I could do it a lot better just in meditation in my chamber.
Yeah. That's probably made you a lot more sensitive to these other substances that help induce these effects, where you don't even, you get to a point where you would be better off not engaging with them at all.
Because it's a substance and it's not pure humanness.
Right.
And the humanness is higher than any substance.
Right. I mean, in a lot of, I forget which ancient Chinese traditions, but they talk about, yes, the use of plant substances can be helpful to a certain degree, but you're losing some of your vital life force by engaging with them. And you just have to know that and balance that out. And
you're getting a residue. You're getting a poison inside of you. Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, it's not evil. There's nothing wrong with it, except there's a form of toxicity. Yeah. Like even a plant as beautiful as ayahuasca leaves its own residue, which is in the higher sense of the world, it's a certain unholiness to it. But using it with intention is beautiful, is holy, you know? And that's all good. I mean, we do it all the time. We use things, and those things have a backlash in our system. And I understand this very well through homeopathy. Like anything that you take, which is a foreign substance, will impact itself in the vital energy, and the vital energy will push it out. It'll kick it out, and it causes a backlash. So the up and the down, and also some kind of a symptom sort of thing. Okay, so all this to say, I was just looking for answers because, you know, like I'm trained in Kriya Yoga. I'm initiated in Kriya Yoga. I did 3 levels of initiation. And for me, I love Kriya Yoga because they're alchemists too, and they're not just into the Luciferian, this is all an illusion. Like the Advaita Vedanta gets into that. The non-dualistic philosophy of India can get readily into the denial of the physical. Yeah. But not the Kriya Yogis, not the Siddhas from Tamil Nadu. They had balance there, and it's like I found home.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah. It's like I found home in that. Right. So I was trained, but I didn't really learn about the terrifying nature at the threshold. And I don't think everybody has a terrifying experience. I think it's particularly my karma. It's my astrological birth chart. I could go into the details. It's I think it's also a little bit being Jewish. You know, in the Torah, I think I have the Torah flowing through my veins. And in the Torah there's a belief that is encoded there so frequently that we should fear God.
Yeah. So you see that in Christianity as well.
And it's a half truth.
Yeah.
There is a true there, but any true, this is a Hermetic principle, all truths are half truths. So no matter what a truth we encounter, there's also something to understand of its counterpart, because we live in a world of correspondence of the father and the mother. So if it's a declaration of the mother, it's half true to the father. The father is going to seemingly negate the mother's expression of truth, but they're just opposite each other, and they unify as a whole. So I even like my teacher, Marshall Govindan Satchidananda, suggested that the fear might be because I'm Jewish and I have this relationship with God of one of fear. So there's truth there, but then there's also a negative space, a limitation, an unnecessary nature. And he said, dude, like basically this, he didn't say dude, but he said, dude, Shiva Amba, which means God is love. And that's good. That's good. That's so beautiful, man. So he's right. Like there's nothing to fear there. Any fear, anything that the mind puffs up at that moment is strictly the mind trying to maintain control. So it's all an unreality, but it has a strong, precedent of thousands of years of, reaffirmed belief that we should fear God. So, I was looking for answers to that fear. And this was one of the answers, Shiva Amba, God is love. But another one came from Steiner's teachings about the guardian of the threshold, initiation, like all of his teachings around initiation. I can't even imagine. Like he describes the fears exactly what it feels like to the ego. It's extremely uncomfortable. It's like your whole being is a testicle and you're getting kicked in the balls. Like you're getting kicked in your like the whole, you're getting squeezed and incredibly uncomfortable. And so he says like one needs to recognize the inevitability of that step. That's what harnesses enough courage to go there. Because I've found myself going, no, I don't like this. No, I don't like this, God. I just want to be Moshe. I just want to lead a normal life. No, I don't want this. I don't want this. I just want to be me. I want the ego. I'm like affirming I want the ego. And God's like, all right, you could do that. Go for it, But then a part of me is like, dang, like that's not what I want. It's what the ego wants. So obviously there's a fundamental part of the self, the very fundamental part of ourself that wants to survive in its identity with itself. It could be very strong. So Steiner brings a lot of pearls of wisdom. And there's this dude who narrates his teachings, and he does such a great job. I forget what it is online, but if you
it's on YouTube?
Yeah. It's all over YouTube.
Okay.
He comes up like number one, and there's hundreds of his episodes.
That'd be helpful because I'm reading Theosophy right now, and in the preface of Theosophy, it describes how you'll have to revisit sentences over and over and over and over again, and I'm like 30 pages in.
Right, because you have to keep...
Well, there's layers of meaning too, and depending on my current constitution, I'll read one thing and it can mean one thing to me, and then I'll go back and read it again. I'm like, oh, I take that to mean something completely different at this point in time.
Right.
So having someone narrate and sort of break it down a little bit can sometimes be a little bit better.
Yeah, he's really, I appreciate this guy. And also like the language, first of all, it's translated from the German.
Right.
The language is so high level in English. And like, we don't talk like that anymore today, but just the formulation of the sentences and like the meaning, like Steiner, like his level of intelligence is huge. He was like a real initiate. Yeah. So he understood what he was talking about with the initiation into the higher worlds and the experience of the oneness.
Do you think that, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I guess yes or no question, so we don't go off on too much of a tangent.
I'll try to say just yes or no.
Okay. So obviously, we've both come to the same conclusion that Steiner was a Rosicrucian, and I've asked my friends this before. You talk about him being an initiate. It's more being initiated into the understanding of the higher worlds, which the Rosicrucian lineage helped facilitate that, I'd imagine. My question is it necessary to follow a specific lineage or be initiated into a specific lineage in order to understand higher worlds? And I guess the second part to that is do you think these Rosicrucian lineages are still around today in their true essence of helping this benevolence that helps people understand how to come into their full being, I guess?
Yeah, great question. So the answer to the first question is no, it's not necessary, but it's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think in our true nature is the isness. So you don't need any teacher for that. But I feel like Louis C.K. But there's so many pitfalls. There's so much to, like, a good teacher can help you avoid, can accelerate your growth. Yeah. I think it would be a very rare and special soul incarnation that could do it by themselves. Yeah. But it is possible. It is possible. The second thing is about the Rosicrucian. I think, yes, they do exist today. How to find the pure teachers, I don't know. Yeah. And even like the writings, there's a lot of Rosicrucian alchemy texts that are very revealing, but they still have like the like the throw you off the path, pitfalls that are woven in. And, that's a topic, that's a whole other topic unto itself about the legitimacy of secrecy, and not even just secrecy, not even just like keeping something hidden, but literally creating a false representation of alchemy to throw people off the path.
Yeah.
And then that gets adopted by all the writers of the time, so they all repeat it.
Yeah. And then that becomes what people think alchemy actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because alchemy's for me, alchemy is the pinnacle of all things on the planet. If it's heart-centered towards the Christ.
Well, see, this is what I was going to ask. And that's the big caveat, that if it's heart-centered towards the Christ.
Yes.
So I used to become frustrated with occulted knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And then after looking into this, I won't even say that I've gone near as deep as you have, but I sort of thought to myself, like, if this material, this knowledge, this wisdom is truly as powerful as it is claimed to be, which I do believe that it is, you'd probably want it to be occulted and have some of these things that throw people off to some degree.
Yes.
Because we know that the dark arts also use alchemical processes and alchemical understanding in order to do what they do. And so I could see where to some degree it might be necessary to sometimes throw people off and make it so occulted so that only people who are going to hold it in high regard for benevolence are the ones who come across and use it.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, I agree. And I actually think that what may have occurred is that the controlling bastards, that they got their hands on it a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just wanted it for themselves. They don't want the unwashed masses
That's a good point too.
Have the access like they have to wealth, to health and longevity.
Really
if you
good
have
point too.
wealth and longevity, you can achieve your goal. If your goal is to control the planet, you got a pretty good formula there. I think, I don't know.
Right.
I think they have it. And so I think that the people that have been planning the whole, satanic takeover of the world, they have it.
Yeah.
So they're slow in their planning, which makes them more intelligent and more whatever. Yeah. So they have that knowledge. And so it's easy for them to throw everybody off the path.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's actually a really good point. That kind of flies in the face of what I said. Because then if we, the masses who do have some benevolence in us, don't have this knowledge, then we're not able to affect change to the level that we could otherwise if we had this knowledge. So there is some negative aspects of it being occulted as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's always, like, when we think of where we are now and where we could be, like if everybody had the Philosopher's Stone at once, it would create chaos.
Yeah, insane.
But only for a little bit, like a healing crisis. Maybe some people would die in the process. Some people might starve. Shit would hit the fan a little bit. But then everybody would have inside of themselves what all they need, and they would not need anything, so they would not act out of control anymore.
Yeah.
So I have grappled with this a lot. I tend to be a little bit secretive too, and I think that's just a habit as an alchemist. I don't know if I would reveal as much as I possibly could. I like to drip out a little bit, and part of that is, again, all truths are half truths, and this is like there's something in denying a person from learning it for themselves. Mm-hmm. It's like such a treasure, that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you take the rat and you put the rat right at the cheese and it doesn't get through the maze by itself, well, it's not going to know how to do it itself, and it's not going to appreciate the cheese as much. You take away a gift, because like if alchemy is one of the highest paths to the divine, provided it's heart-centered with the Christ, then its mysteries are also incredible gifts. Mm-hmm. So I am a little bit in that camp too, right? Yeah. So it's a little bit of a balance thing there. Yeah.
If you frequently tune into The Way Forward, you know that I strongly believe chronic and recurring stress is one of the leading causes of illness. And unfortunately, stress has become a commonplace experience for many of us in the modern world. Did you know that magnesium plays a crucial role in managing stress? It's essential for ensuring adequate hydration of your body's waters, regulating stress hormones like cortisol, balancing our nervous and hormonal systems, and producing the relaxing neurotransmitter GABA. Unfortunately, most magnesium supplements you'll find in health stores use only the 2 cheapest synthetic forms of magnesium. And since they're not full spectrum, they won't help with your magnesium deficiency or do much to support your health. There are actually 7 key forms of magnesium, and you must get all of them if you want to experience its calming, stress balancing effects. That's why I only recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It's the only organic, full-spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress resilience, better sleep, and better hydration, all in one bottle. For those interested, you can try Magnesium Breakthrough with an exclusive offer. Just go to bioptimizers.com/Alec or head to the show notes and use promo code ALEC10 during checkout to save 10% on your order. Okay, so you didn't really finish your thought, and I usually attribute that to being a fault of mine on this show, or just endless tangents, but
side explorations.
Yeah, it's just how it goes.
Yeah.
On the threshold, so you were experiencing this threshold where part of you was like, no, I don't want to lose my ego. No, I need to lose my ego. And you're at this point in between, this sort of precipice maybe, and then you're exploring Steiner's teachings that's helping you resolve this issue. So what did you learn from Steiner specifically related to that?
Okay, so I've learned from Steiner. I've also learned from my friend Navide. She's a seer.
Okay.
Amazing person. She's had samadhi in her life. Grateful for her and other things. Also initiated inside my own self some understanding. Well, what Steiner brought was this understanding, because first of all, I thought there was something wrong with me. Like, why do I have so much fear? But he helped me understand exactly. He expresses the fear perfectly at that place. And like when you get to the teachings of the yogis, or maybe, I don't know, I haven't studied with any Taoist masters, but they tell you about the butterflies and the rainbows after the painful death process, after the terror has been synthesized. And maybe they never had terror. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So that was really, really edifying. And even my teacher, when I brought him this, he didn't acknowledge that, yeah, man, there's some fear there. He was just like, dude, it's probably because you're Jewish and, Shiva Amba. But recently I have encountered some other teachers. Like there's a gentleman named Shailendra Sharma who's alive today. I think he's in Pune in India. And he's also a disciple on my path of Kriya Yoga. Like he met Babaji, mm-hmm. I believe his story, his account. And he said that when he first encountered samadhi, it was terrifying for him. Mm. So I was like, I love this guy. Validating. Yeah, I love this guy.
So it's not a function of there's being something wrong with me, although I'd imagine some of your conditioning played into that, as you've acknowledged, with like the fear God, some of that stuff related to being a Jew. Yes. But it's also that this is a natural function of experiencing the threshold.
Right, exactly. Okay. Exactly. And I like to share this also because I think the more we go forward, more and more people are going to be, dipping their toe into the causal and beyond. Mm-hmm. In a real way, not in leaving the body, but through the container of the body, which is
through the body. Can you, when you're dipping into the causal, is it that you have to go through the astral to the causal, or is it a direct link to the causal?
That's a great question. Gosh, I think.
Like, how did you experience it in the threshold? Did you feel that you had to move through some sort of astral aspect of yourself in order to feel the threshold?
Well, I wouldn't because I've experienced the astral on medicines. Like when you're in ayahuasca, you're seeing the colors, like you're right in the astral. Yeah. I don't experience that per se. I go right to the causal from this stillness of mind. Mm-hmm. The stillness, again, the pole star, that still magnetic neutral light that Walter Russell talks about. Russell's still magnetic light. Yeah. So heaven and earth, like a person wants to do a very simple alchemical, very, very powerful meditation. It's just sit in stillness. You know, you could use the mantra, be still and know I am God, or be still and know I am that I am. And when you say I am that I am, you're literally pointing that I am. I am that I am. I love that.
I do too.
Yeah, it's great. So in the stillness, you connect crown chakra with the heavens. You feel expansiveness there. You open up the root chakra. You feel an expansiveness there. It's like the womb of the earth taking you in. You bring these nice and gently with the mind up from the earth into the right here, not in the heart chakra, but a little lower. Okay. This is where the core star lives, according to the teachings of Barbara Brennan, which is I experience. It's right here.
Okay. So in between the solar plexus and the heart chakra. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the heavens, and you just bring these together and you see them uniting. This is a secret of alchemy, internal alchemy. Mm-hmm. Alchemy is all about, like, I'm reading this book now. It's called The Jewish Alchemists. Love it. And like the Torah, the very first chapter of Torah, Bereshit, Genesis, the first chapter is pure alchemical knowledge. It blows my mind. It enthralls me. And I shouldn't get too enthralled because there's a bit of an Aramonic nature there, a little bit, which we'll talk about more, hopefully. So the first line in Torah is Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning of the Elohim, creating the heavens and the earth. Shamayim and aretz. Heavens and earth. So that's really what we're after. We're seeking to unite the heaven. We're seeking to embed, unite, marry the heaven energy with the earth energy. Yeah. And it takes place right here. This is the seat of the causal right here.
I love that. Because so this is going to be kind of cliche, cheesy, but also cool. And it relates to exactly what you're saying. So these are all my combo scars. I have like 92 of them.
Oh my gosh.
And the one...
Well, I got to show mine too. I got some... I only have like 6 or so. And they're faded. Yeah, they're right here. There's like a few. And I got some on the base of my spine too.
Amazing. Yeah, it's an incredible medicine. But the reason I'm showing this is because I actually chose that exact pattern where there's a diamond in the middle that represents us as human beings. And then there's a triangle at the bottom representing the earth with lines connecting to the diamond that is us. And then a triangle at the top representing the heavens. Perfect. And a line connecting to the diamond that is us, because we are the bridge between spirit and matter. And we're here to pull down the heavens and bring them onto earth. And we're the stewards of that as human beings for this realm.
100%. And that's what the human born man, Jesus, did. Yeah. He fully embodied the Christ. You know, there's a bit of a difference between Jesus and the Christ. Of course, they're one, but like we tend to focus a lot on Jesus, the man who was God on earth, and maybe ignore a little bit the Christ principle, which lives in all people, which is the basis of reality. When we unify the opposites and when we get into stillness, basically we get into stillness when we stop trying to get stuff from the outside, our desires. Because this Walter Russell's work, this is what he really was strong about. As soon as you desire something, the unified field of the causal is split into the masculine and feminine, and they make this like loop, and they seek each other, and they're like, oh, it's like, oh, it's like you desire someone, and you get them, and you're like, oh, orgasm. But then that which goes up comes down. So there's this principle of like externalizing need. You get it fulfilled, but it's just like a drip of the drug. Mm-hmm. You get it outside the self, but when the truth exists in the self. So at a certain point, the person is done with their desires and they stop seeking externally, and they just find that stillness, like all is good in the hood. There's nothing to do. All is okay. And then they attain stillness and become a whole person. And that's what's so interesting about the threshold. It's the simplest kind of thing of wholeness. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
But the ego, and I could point at myself now because you might not have this fear whatsoever. The ego is actually afraid of the true nature. And it's just whole. It's just okay. It's just still, nothing to be done. Very Taoist. You know, when there's nothing to be done, there's nothing left undone.
I could totally see that. There's so many levels there because what you're pointing to is that the ego, and correct me if I'm wrong, the ego is afraid of the reality that there only is oneness. There only is whole, unified.
Yes.
Because that means that the ego, which is this individuated portion within the whole, is, despite feeling and existing very real in this realm of polarity and duality, is at its essence not actually there. And so it feels that means it's going to collapse back into the oneness. Yeah, it dies. It's gone.
It dies. It's gone.
Yeah. It's
exactly.
not individuated
and
anymore.
We're so used to identifying, like the word, I like the word identity, identifying, because it is basically the very nature of the name of God is I am. It's identity. It's pure identity. So what we identify with has a huge amount of power. And right when we're little kids, I mean, the most innocent mistake is what kids start to identify with the body. And they say, oh, this is me. You know, they're like,
right.
And then they start to make this correlation, like I move this and this is me. And so we start to get identified with the body and we identify with our feelings very strongly and our thoughts the strongest. Like we're most identified with our thoughts. Even if that thought is about the body. Right. Like, so we identify with the body, but that's still through the mind.
It's still through the mind.
Everything is mind.
Everything is mind.
Everything is mind. Yeah.
I was going to ask you actually, on your healing your autoimmune condition that you had. Remind me what it was called again. It's
myasthenia gravis. It's like it's Latin
gravis.
for serious muscles weakness.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to sort of skip ahead a little bit.
Sure.
In asking what I would imagine to be a rhetorical question for you, but nonetheless important. How much of your healing this illness was related to resolving something in the mind?
100%. 100%.
Did you go through a phase of finding sort of this temporary comfort or temporary reduction in symptoms, inflammation, and things like this? Because this is what I hear a lot from people who have autoimmune conditions that they're either in the middle of resolving or have resolved. Yeah. Is that there's a period of, it's purely something of the body, physical. So I just need to get my nutrition right. Yeah. I need to do all the X, Y, and Z physical things, sort of overlooking the metaphysical underpinnings that create those physical things in the first place, because it's all mind, right? Yes. But then there's a temporary reduction in symptoms and looking at just purely the physical, but then they come roaring back, or it's still there in some ways. And Absolutely. It wasn't until they resolved it here that they truly healed.
100%. You're so well spoken, because anything that is manifested as a chronic illness, and that could be mental, emotional, but let's say we talk about physical, it's more tangible. Yeah. It's as a result of where we are stuck karmically in our present incarnation. So it's actually a messenger, and it's a beautiful messenger. And the message has to be understood at the level of the source of it, which is in the mind. The belief, there's a false perception, because the body, in alchemy, this is true too. And I heard Steve say that as well, that the body is the physical, the material is passive. It's the feminine. And so is the water element. And then the mind dwells in the air. It's active. So everything is mind, and the body just reflects that. So if we have a chronic illness, there's something that we're not getting in the mind. And so it's a messenger, and that's a beautiful thing. And if we you see, in some places, because all truths are half truths, so I want to address a half truth here. There are some people who they can't, or they don't have to, or they don't want to have to get to the mind level, so they can just resolve the problem at the physical, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But for the majority of people, especially now in this day and age, when we have these chronic illnesses, we have to look at the mental source of them. Otherwise, we're just in a form of control of medicine. We're controlling with proper diet, controlling with detoxification, controlling with nutritional supplementation, and functional medicine is working at the level of control. It's not as controlling as allopathic, which is to counteract symptoms, antipathic, against the symptoms, but it's still a form of control in that it's material based. It's not working at the source of the disharmony as it exists in the mind.
Right.
I would like to assert that I think we're here to evolve into who we really are. Mm. And so if we have a chronic illness, it's a great opportunity. In fact, it's a privilege. I like that use of the word privilege because it floats around a lot in sort of a bullshit kind of way.
In a negative connotation.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a privilege to have an illness.
It's easy for you to say that with your white privilege.
Exactly. Sorry, no, good. Thank you. I'm very privileged. And everybody, you see, I have patients who they come in and they say, "Doctor, help me get rid of this illness. I can't stand it. I can't take it. It's messing with my game plan." 2, after a certain amount of time, I learned so much from this. I can't even imagine who I would be now without it. Right. And that was true for me too. Mm. And I had spontaneous healing of severe paralysis.
Wow. What year was this?
1995.
Wow. So you were not a doctor yet?
No, I had applied for naturopathic medicine, got accepted, deferred for a year, went traveling, was in Israel and India, got super sick there. Not for nothing,
Right.
Something very interesting. Came back to Canada, started the program. But before I started the program, I went to the Options Institute, Barry Neil Kaufman. I learned the Vis Dialogue from him. Mm-hmm. First of all, I was healed through it. It's very simple questions.
Is this what precipitated your Vis Dialogue?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It's based on Barry Neil Kaufman's Vis Dialogue.
Continue on with that, but I want to talk to you about inward bound autism healing, because I know I've heard you reference that in another interview.
Exactly. That's also Barry Neil Kaufman and Samaria Kaufman.
I figured.
The husband and wife team who had an autistic child in the 70s who was extremely autistic, and they cured him of autism just by mirroring him for 2.5 years in a room. If he spun plates, they spun plates. If he hit his head, they hit their head.
There's something so interesting about that when you said it, and I'm sure you've already thought about this, being that you're a homeopath.
Yeah.
That relates to homeopathy because like cures like.
Exactly. The mirror.
Yeah.
Like any mirror is very teaching. Even if you look at your like astrological birth chart, you're seeing yourself mirrored.
Yeah.
It's healing.
Yeah.
And the remedy is like very powerful because it's a vibrational substance that's mirroring.
Yeah.
It's not just at the intellect. It's in the mind, the emotional field, the vital field, and the body, all at the same time. That's why homeopathy is so powerful.
We'll get to that. Sorry.
I
just wanted to make that point because at the moment you said that on that previous interview, I was like, oh my God, of course he's drawn to this. And he's also drawn to homeopathy because it's really the same thing. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I learned from it. I also had a dialogue done. And in the dialogue, I was asked a bunch of questions, got to this point where I heard myself saying, because I need to be perfect. That was what I came out of my mouth. And I meant it. I didn't assert it in any way, like I didn't question it. I had never thought about this before.
Wow.
It's almost 30 years ago. It's 29 years ago. And the next question of the person who did their job very well is, what makes you think you need to be perfect? And I had a spontaneous healing.
Wow.
It was like, I had never thought about the question. So the answer itself was healing. I don't need to be perfect. And I got it. Not everybody can move that like that. Some people they have more tendrils that stick the core belief. Mm. But I had a spontaneous healing. My arms, like eyes, breathing. I was cured, basically. I'll say healed, because I did have moments of if I would slip back into that, or in times of extreme stress or lack of sleep, I would get maybe 10% of the symptoms back. But I was pretty functional without any problems for about 20-something years. And then I had round 2.
What was round 2?
Round 2 is when my wife and I got pregnant. And the shit hit the fan in a deeper core issue for me. I thought my life was over. I had very strong misconceptions about what being a father would mean. And I thought, like, I was very attached to this notion of becoming enlightened.
So you saw getting pregnant as a child getting in the way of your own path to enlightenment.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Which is like very wrong.
Yeah.
But the ego, like, was attached to it.
Yeah. Well, also probably thinking you were unattached to your ego at the time too, ironically, right?
Probably. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah. I mean, the kids have brought so much growth to me because I've had to transcend my desires. And ironically, this is probably the greatest irony there is. To desire enlightenment is the greatest irony I think there is, because the ego is annihilated. Well, at least the ego's desire is annihilated in the enlightenment. So it's completely unappealing to the ego once we recognize what enlightenment really means. It's not getting what the ego wants at all.
Right.
And I do want to just throw in one quick little thing. Something that has helped me actually is in realizing that the ego is not annihilated. It's not destroyed. It's still this temporary vessel that we can live within, which is a joy. Yeah. Actually.
Yeah.
And it's just not the I am. It's not the identity.
But it's necessary for the ego to go through the full acceptance of dissolution of ego,
right,
and then come around to understanding that, okay, that doesn't actually happen, but you have to at least accept it in order to really pull in this higher aspect of yourself down here where you are playing with your ego while existing in this realm.
Beautifully said. Very well articulated. The ego has to let go of all control. That's a necessity. All control of the mind. Like, because you can relax the body and stuff, but still be in control of the emotional field. And then there's a total surrender of the emotional field, and then there's a total surrender of the mind.
How do you do that? How do you get there?
Well, there's a diving board tip where when the mind is so still, like you're not thinking, oh, did I turn off the oven? Or, oh shit, I got to make money. Or, oh, I have to appear. Because these are the things that distract, like the little demonic forms when we're in meditation that are like always like monkey minding us. And it's a part of us, it's a part of that field. It's not like this totally separate thing. They're pulling at us to draw us into desire.
Right.
So when we recognize all monkey minding is desire and there's a stillness, then it starts to happen naturally. So you just get drawn into it and you just allow it to happen. You can't will it. You can just undo the resistance to it because it is the basis of our true nature. The I am. It's not for nothing when Moses asks God, what's your name? God says, well, he says, I shall be as I shall be, Eya, Asher, Eya, which is, there's a certain reason for that, like the unfolding of time. We're in a state of becoming. Yeah. But it's essentially, I am. It's pure isness. Isness is and never wasn't. That freaks me out when I think about that.
It's so funny you say that. I say that to my wife all the time. If there's one thing that conjures up a holy shit feeling inside of me, it's when I think of that really deeply. But it's like, if I just say it, it doesn't. But if I really sit and think about it, like, oh my God, like that is really almost scary, but also powerful at the same time to think about, like, is and always will be, always has been. Like, how does that make sense in our ego?
It doesn't. No. It's beyond time. I lay in bed with the kids and they say, but Daddy, who created God? And I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
Is is and always has been and never wasn't. How is that possible?
I know.
And that's a Zen koan. You know, a Zen koan is designed for this exact purpose. Like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Or if a tree, that's a Zen koan. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. It's just to get you to think about this and to freak yourself out.
Yeah.
And I think that this even more powerful Zen koan is like, who created God?
Yeah.
Because you get to this place of is and always was and always shall be.
Yeah.
It's
your kids say some pretty profound things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mine do too. I have a whole list of things that my son has asked us where I'm like, where is that even coming from? Things that we don't even talk about in front of him that he just pulls inside of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So
out of the mouth
like,
of babes.
Yeah. Out of the mouth of babes.
Out of the mouth of babes.
When you talk about like, it's so funny that you thought that your life was over when you had kids and now you're learning from them and they're ironically aiding in your development as a human being.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's a privilege to be a parent. I see it completely different now.
Yeah.
I still struggle a little bit. There's still a part of me that would like to have more freedom.
Same. I think if every parent was honest with himself, that would be the case.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Just the truth.
The freedom ultimately is to be harnessed internally, right? Like you could be in a Siberian prison and attain freedom. There have been people that have become enlightened in the worst circumstances, literally with no freedom.
Yeah.
And they've attained that enlightenment. So it's not an external thing. But our ego, especially in this day and age, because we've really been offered this gift, which is a half truth because it's also a trap of freedom. But that's like the ego wants to pursue that. And that's a trap too, because you can become desirous of freedom. And anything you externalize desire to, you're saying, I will be better if I have that condition.
I don't have it now.
I don't have it now.
Yeah.
And therefore you're splitting yourself from causal stillness into movement of electric opposites to have this like orgasmic, you know, oh my God, I got what I wanted. And then I need it again, and I need it again. And then we develop a hole in the self that grows.
Yeah.
The more we feed it.
Yeah. And we're co-creating like as an aspect of the one true self, the one mind, right? Yeah. So if we orient ourselves in that direction, we will actually feel that. So Tom Barnett, I don't know if you're familiar with him, based out of Australia. He gave one of the best talks I've ever seen at this festival that I was just at in Australia a few weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
And it was framed around natural law, and I'm not going to do it the service that it deserves in my explanation of it, but basically says that the moment you express that I need or desire something outside of you, you are then saying, I don't already have all that I need inside of me. And you're going to continue to feel the creation of not having all that you need inside of you because you are a powerful co-creator.
Exactly.
So it's reconciling with you already have everything that you need. And it's meant quite literally. That's how people become breatharians, because that is how powerful we are as human beings. And breatharians, as an example, have tapped into the understanding that no, literally, we have everything that we need inside of us already, and that is the potential that we could tap into.
Yes.
Now there's a spectrum that you can play within that, but it's coming from that understanding as the foundation.
Exactly. That's like probably one of the most important secrets. We'll call it a secret. It's truth that we can come to, like that we can aspire towards really embodying. And that's the basis of my work with the Vis Dialogue, is that we are that I am. The I am is okay. It doesn't need anything. It is. There's nothing appended onto that. It's the eternal surrender of okayness. As soon as we get something in the mind that says, I need that, then we become conditionally oriented. And that usually happens in childhood. That's the formation of it. And it could be a literal, very unhealthy situation, or it could be just a misinterpretation, the child using their imagination, or all's good in the hood with the child, but they spin something because they're using their imagination. They're playing and they become attached to the idea. Most of the wounds in the mind are because of the wounded parenting.
Yeah.
The parents are sick. But still, a child can spin something and then kind of role play that. And then before they know it, they're locked in. Yeah. Which is unfortunate. So an attachment, this is a bit of one of those noodle mind-blowing things. It could be, I need love. It's not true. Right. But the child, it's true for the child.
It is.
It is true. Yeah. Because they need love and they deserve love and it's their right to be loved.
Well, there's a certain period of time, and I know Steiner talks about this too, that up until a certain point, I forget the age that Steiner talks about, like the child's identity is not individuated. So it still necessitates, it requires love, nourishment, all these things from the parents. Like it's a requirement, 100%. Of course. And it's because they haven't individuated in any capacity.
And a parent that can't or won't or doesn't want to do that is not really befit to be a parent. Right. And none of us are perfect and we're all wounded. Yeah. And I'm not saying we need to be perfect, but a parent should be damn well devoted to the intention of loving that child with all their heart, all their soul, and all their power. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. But if you're like lazing out on that, then you're not doing your job. 100%. So there is that, like being a parent, at least we're trying our best to be loving. And then the child sees, let's say, oh, they don't want to be around me. I'm not getting attention. I'm not happy because I'm not getting attention. Ergo, I need attention to be happy. There's the belief. There's the formation of the belief. And so it's true at a certain point, but then as the child grows, now they're looking for attention. They're acting as a child, trying to seek attention outside themselves, and they're forgotten who they really are, which is the I amness, which needs nothing except stillness and a recognition of the truth. I'm okay. So in the process of holistic counseling, we use this model of I am as the basis of reality, and the belief system is the distraction around which it's the ferment around which all suffering starts, including physical pathology. So a person could start with cancer or MS or low back pain, and we get to this core belief through the pathology by asking about it, and it starts to go from physical description to emotional to belief system. And then we help them correlate the belief inside of their subconscious to the physical, and there could be spontaneous healing, or it can be a war of attrition, a long bloody battle with the ego, and anywhere in between. Really.
So with the Vis Dialogue, you're essentially, to some degree, using the Socratic method, question asking, to invite the client that you're working with to inquire these things themselves.
Yes.
I would imagine that because all of these foundationally flawed belief systems that these individuals are presenting with are a function of the ego ultimately.
Yes.
The ego is going to put up artificial constructs in order to avoid getting to the root to some degree. Do you find that that is something that is common with Vis Dialogue?
Common. Yes. The ego has all kinds of tricks, because it's difficult. It's a challenging form of medicine. The mind is a minefield. There's a lot of pitfalls, so this is another part of what I teach in the program is I help people how to navigate the minefield. How to recognize when a person is being deceitful. And sometimes it's obvious. Like a person will say X, and then they'll say almost in the same breath, and they don't even realize it, not X. I just said it. Right. So I'll call them out on that. I won't let that slip. I'm on that. I'm on it.
Sometimes is it unbeknownst to them as well? Like they're fooling themselves?
Yeah, because we have this duplicit, polarized nature. So the very true nature of father and mother becomes disharmonious and they operate independently of each other. It's split. You could see that in like borderline personality disorder, multiple personality disorder, bipolar. These are all problems of the polar nature having no bridge with each other.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no bridge, they operate individually, and then one is denying the other is denying the other. So this declaration needs this opposite declaration.
Yeah. I see that. I've experienced a family member who has strong borderline tendencies, and you sort of see with them the cyclical nature in which they behave. You know that if you're getting one aspect here soon, you're going to get the other aspect.
Yes.
And before you know what you're dealing with, it can be so trippy for you, especially if it's a close family member, until you zoom out and recognize that, oh, okay, I see these polarities that this individual is embodying, this whole spectrum where it's this end and then this end. And when you can zoom out and look at it, then you can move into a state of acceptance. Like, okay, it brings up an interesting point that I don't like naming specific diseases, but it serves a purpose when it comes to mental things sometimes, so you can know what you're dealing with,
and also learn from some precedents, like what are the things that accompany it. I agree. I don't think we should be married to our diagnosis, because it itself can become a prison. But to understand what we're dealing with is helpful. People sometimes feel relieved. Like, what's wrong with me? Oh, I have this, and then they could kind of But if then they identify with it, that's a problem.
Right.
Again, it's all this a balance of opposites. Half truths. So the belief system. One of my laments right now is I'm a naturopathic doctor. I went through formal training, 4 years medical school, not conventional medical school, but naturopathic doctors have an identity crisis of trying to appear credible by emulating the conventional medical pathway, which is a big mistake. And it's coming from ego. It's coming from insecurity. And I think we have a lot to be proud of. That's my message. That's basically the message of the revolution of naturopathic medicine. I published that in 2004. But in naturopathic medicine, we're really trying to emulate conventional medicine, which is very lost. It's a very lost medicine. It's completely Kali Yuga medicine. It's lost in the darkness of the material. 100%. And that, according to Rudolf Steiner, is purely Ahrimanic. It denies the spirit, it denies the etheric. And I heard your talk with our alchemist friend from Scotland, and that came up very clearly. And so my lament is that even the alternative medicines are still pretty lost.
100% on a number of fronts.
And not everybody, not the individuals. There's some
the systems of knowledge.
Yes, that's right.
Are totally lost.
Exactly. Because, first of all, if you're let's say you're in conventional medicine, you're like, oh shit, conventional medicine is the truth, right? And then you're like, oh darn, there's something better. It's called functional medicine. It's true that it is a step in the right direction. But it's not in very deep principles. It's still very superficial medicine.
It's green allopathy, in my opinion. That's what I've described functional medicine as. And I'm not saying that that's the same for anyone who says they are a functional medicine MD or DO or some type of practitioner. But functional medicine as a body from the outside looks like, oh, you have these symptoms. Let's not get to the root of those symptoms. Let's do a bunch of labs and panels that are only a snapshot in time, and who knows whether they're accurate, but let's spend a lot of money on that to get a bunch of supplements for you so that we can deal with the symptoms rather than trying to get to the root cause.
Or a better, they call it the root cause. They're better targeting nutrition, like what's the deficiency nutritionally, or the bacterial overgrowth of the small intestine, or gastrointestinal reflux, or whatever. They're getting.
It's still compartmentalized.
It's still compartmentalized. It's systems based rather than symptom based. And then another step of evolution is what naturopathic medicine is truly meant to be: is working with the vital force, stimulating the vital force, a true detoxification, and a true nutrition. And that's Lindlarian principles. Henry Lindlar, who was one of the forebearers of naturopathic medicine. And that's deeper than even functional medicine. And the Naturopathic Medicine Institute we're a ragtag bunch of vitalist naturopathic doctors, like holding the torch in the screaming winds of ignorance of where the profession is going and where the colleges are totally overrun by the controls. Mm-hmm. They've taken over the system because it was a threat. Yeah. Any truth could be a threat. Mm-hmm. And money, interests, and big pharma and investments. There's also that too. So then a deeper medicine, and by the way, we're going through the yugas here.
The yugas of medicine, essentially.
They're the yugas of medicine.
Okay.
So you have the Kali Yuga is total ignorance. It's it's the dark ages. And then you go into acupuncture is electric. It's yin and yang. Yeah. And it's a deeper medicine. But even acupuncture is not as high as the higher yugas. Acupuncture, anything that has vital principles of yin and yang, of polarity, is very much more advanced than the Kali Yuga. Mm. That would be the Dwapara Yuga, which I believe we're in now.
Okay.
I don't think we're in the Kali.
Okay.
Yeah. And I could explain why.
I would love to hear that too, because I hear conflicting ideas. I like even a few different people I follow say that we're coming to the Kali Yuga, the close on the Yuga cycle in 2037 or 2035. So let's pin that for later.
Okay, we'll pin it. We'll try to get around to that. Let's do it. I love this topic. Yeah. And then, so the medicine that I do in the mind, it's still Dwapara, but it's late to Dwapara because in the astral we have the subtle body, which are three bodies. Mm-hmm. We have vital body, we have the Manomaya kosha, which is the subconscious, the emotional field, and then we have Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the intellectual field.
So these are the three bodies just of the astral.
Exactly.
Oh wow. Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So in this model, there's 5 bodies.
Got it.
The physical, the 3 in the astral, and the 1 in the causal.
Okay, interesting.
So I think that when you're working at the level of the mind, you tap into the causal. Mm-hmm. But you're also working in the intellect itself, which is like higher Vijnanamaya kosha, which is everything is mind. It's a high level of medicine. Mm-hmm. But there is medicine beyond that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, mysteries galore to be uncovered. Alchemy, Christ, glory, glory, hallelujah, miracle healing. Mm-hmm. Just pure knowing, pure faith in the Christ, in God, in our true nature. Like that goes the disease, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, and then there's, the Satya Yuga there's no disease in that. There's no medicine in that. It's just is. Mm-hmm. And that heals all things. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That was cool to hear it framed that way.
Yeah, it's cool. That's sort of like, I kind of realize that the different medicines are a reflection of where we are in our evolution, from pure control and opposition to some control. Like the doctor's still in control. Mm-hmm. And you can see it reflected in the ego of the doctor. They are in control in themselves. So they're attracted to a medicine that controls.
Yeah.
And they want to edify their ego by being the one that has the solution.
Yeah.
And this denies the patient the truth. Mm-hmm. That the truth lives in them. The healing
this is also, like you said, giving the rat the cheese in some perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like there's nothing like a person going, holy shit, what's happening to me? Like I never realized this. Like they have pure revelation of the truth. That's so healing. Mm-hmm. And it is, from the practitioner's perspective, so inspiring to sit and watch the person's, like you can just see all the gunk coming out of the mind. Yeah. And they're just dwelling in their true nature. Mm. Like it's so rewarding. Like I can't imagine anything. Maybe like the higher glory, glory, hallelujah. I don't know. Yeah.
That's pretty rad. But with the Vis Dialogue, using these questions, you're continually posing deeper and deeper and deeper questions.
Yes.
Hopefully, because obviously with you're attuned to this, so you can, in most cases, probably catch these like ego diversions and things like this.
Yes.
But you're attempting to get to that root belief system, because the root belief system is what created that effect of the splitting that is creating the whole in that individual and building this artificial version of the individual out here outside of their causal being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be the image.
Yeah.
The person creates an image of themselves, and the image is the false nature. Like if you got so identified with your image in the mirror, you would be living a total lie.
Yeah.
And that is the nature of the ego. The ego itself is an image of the true nature. So it's the same, but it's the false mirror of the self. And that's what like yogis will describe the mind as being. It's an image of the true self. I think that's so fascinating.
Yeah, really fascinating.
Yeah.
What are some of the best stories of people using the Vis Dialogue, you guiding them through it in order to resolve some foundational false belief systems that then stimulated actual physical healing in them?
I have quite a few. I'll try to draw from my database. So one woman had myasthenia gravis. A lot of my cases are myasthenia gravis because I've specialized in that.
Well, I mean, you've done it yourself.
Yeah, yeah, I've done it myself.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to people because it's a kind of a bleak illness when you put your hands in conventional medicine. It's very bleak.
Yeah.
They say it's incurable.
Immunosuppressive drugs, I would imagine.
Yeah, and surgery that doesn't last. Like sometimes it does nothing or doesn't last long, but they still do it. It's weird.
What surgery?
Thymectomy. They take the thymus out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty invasive.
Yeah, insane.
I didn't have that done, thank God.
Thank goodness, yeah.
And it makes it harder. The more medical interventions of that nature, the destructive, the harder it becomes to heal.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the body is, again, a physical manifestation of what's going on in the mind, quite literally.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling with some, irrespective of which health paradigm you buy into, some would say, for example, like in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver deals with anger. Other systems would say something else. But the point is, dealing with liver issues is ultimately some function of the mind that needs to be resolved, I believe. Right? So if you, obviously not in this case removing the liver, but removing the thymus, there's something there that needed to be resolved. And just taking it out, you're stripping your ability of resolving that which led to the issues with the thymus.
Exactly.
So you're having to do double the work.
Exactly. And it becomes a deep suppression.
Yeah.
A deep suppression.
Yeah.
Like taking drugs is suppressive, but like removing an organ is hugely suppressive. This woman who had myasthenia gravis, she was very paralyzed. I dialogued with her, and she couldn't lift her legs, and her arms were very heavy. And I went into that with her and asked her about it. And she said, well, she felt like it was a burden. And of course, I'm condensing like an hour and a bit into a summary. She felt like she was burdened by something. And I asked her what she felt was burdening. And she goes, well, it feels like someone's sitting in my lap. I said, well, who is sitting in your lap? And she said, my whole family. And her story was that I always end up crying when I talk about this stuff. It's always moving. One of her brothers died. And after he died, she felt the family was falling apart. And so she felt responsible to keep everybody together. So she was carrying her family, the weight of her family. And so she realized that she was doing this. She wept about it. She made the choice, because that's really what the medicine is about, is to go from discovery into, okay, this is what the belief is. I have to carry everybody. I'm responsible for it. To, I have a choice here. It's not obligatory. Do you want to do this? And she didn't. The weight lifted and she felt a spontaneous healing. So that was a really cool example of a story.
That's so incredible. I bet that was even cooler though too, because she had the same thing that you had dealt with as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's amazing.
So she had a spontaneous healing. I had a woman not too long ago actually carrying a lot of darkness, and we've done layers. Each layer there's a profound release, and to get to the deepest one, which was the most recent. So it started with this idea. She has a lot going on, like chronic fatigue and lack of energy and depression that takes her out Like she cannot function.
Mhm.
And the core belief that was revealed the first time is that if my dad is not happy, I'm not happy. His well-being is he has to be okay. So she's like constantly doing everything, controlling reality to try to make sure he's okay, but it doesn't work because he's in charge of his own reality. So she actually had one of the most profound releases where she was like, what was happening? Like she was lost control and she felt complete peace after. She was at peace, and she said for the first time in her life.
Wow.
So that was a necessary first step. But we went deeper and deeper. And the most recent belief was that, again, so she's better. So these spells don't last as long, but they're still coming on because there's still something there that she has to recognize. And the core belief was that it's good to suffer.
Wow.
I am good to suffer because Jesus suffered.
Some religious programming.
Programming. And now it's a half truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you suffer because you embody the Christ in the world and you suffer as a result of it, that's good. It's okay. But not to create suffering from yourself for yourself.
Right.
Like that's not, I mean, Jesus died so that we wouldn't have to, like, so that we would be free from suffering.
Yeah.
Suffering might happen, but it's not like we want. So she, first of all, she was creating suffering for herself. When she would be happy, she would create it. She would spin suffering.
Yeah. And I'm not supposed to be happy. It's like a shame-based suffering, essentially. Like I'm supposed to feel in shame, whether it's on the forefront of her mind or not. That's what the subconscious thing was. It was a shame-based suffering.
Shame-based suffering. Yeah. And that defined her goodness. Mm-hmm. I am good because I suffer. And the mind is very strong, right?
Yeah.
So it really spins this. And she invited in the devil to punish her, to make her suffer. So there was a relationship with demonic energies that made her case very extreme. A literal invitation. And by the way, this could be another topic that we go into. There's a very increased activity of demonic activity around.
I would love to cover that.
Increased. Mm-hmm. And there's a few things that people have to understand about demonic activity. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. There's always an invitation. We have to understand the invitation. What is the invitation? For her, she literally was saying, I am bad. I need to suffer. And the perfect agent to make her suffer was a devil. Mm. She thought that she was bad. She invited that energy in. So we had to do a kind of a renunciation of those beliefs and invoke the name of Christ and have her turn her jurisdiction over and say, you have no more claim over me. Like this is the language of the law, right? Mm. That we did. And it was really powerful. So that was another really powerful thing. And that wasn't myasthenia gravis, which it gets boring when all my cases are myasthenia gravis. So really powerful. Yes, a lot of demonic activity because of where we are right now in our times. The Ahrimanic forces are very much at play right now. So Rudolf Steiner, like we were talking about this before. I want to come back to this. We could come back to the Vis Dialogue also if you like. But Steiner explained this reality. So the Luciferic tendency is fire. It's towards the heavens. It's not evil unto itself, but it becomes so when it's strictly out of balance. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
There was a period of time, 3,000 years ago or more, when there was an incarnation of Lucifer. He came as a Chinese man. This is, again, according to Rudolf Steiner's teachings. May have been the Yellow Emperor or Confucius or Lao Tzu or something like that. One of those geniuses. And brought a lot of teachings of the spiritual world to elevate consciousness. Then the incarnation of the physical world is held by Ahriman, also not pure evil, a necessary part of creation, right? The manifest world is a necessary part of creation, but it is evil because it denies, or when it denies, the spirit. Mm. And the one who holds both of these forces together is the Christ. It's the Star of David, because we have the tendency towards just the physical. That's actually the symbol of water, and the tendency towards the spirit. So Christ holds both of these together and brings an end to the war, because they're at war for souls.
Yeah.
Right? The single most threat to the world today is the Ahrimanic.
Mm-hmm.
It's the denial of spirit. It's very strong.
Yeah.
It takes place in the form of atheism, in the form of group identity, identity politics.
Yeah.
And identifying with one's group. Like, I am Jewish and therefore I have to think this way. Becomes.
Or even like in the LGBTQIA plus blah, 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 because it's just adding labels and labels and labels and labels to identify with, on top of already identifying fully and completely with the body.
Exactly. 100%. Or skin color.
Yeah.
Like to imagine that who a person is their skin color is so superficial.
Yeah.
It's the least interesting thing about a human being, the color of their skin.
Right.
I mean, there is some beauty around it.
Totally.
And cultural diversity. I don't think we should deny our skin color. I think we should own it.
Right.
But to just identify, my identity, again, I am that I am, that's God's language. And to say, I am gay, right, or I am Jewish, some kind of identity becomes a spell casting, which is of the nature of Ahriman.
Yeah.
And it is evil in the sense that it denies the Christ because it's locked into a limited form of identity. So this energy is very strong today. It's very strong in like conventional medicine, in naturopathic medicine. And one of the things I love how Steiner paints this is basically when Jesus came, the Christ became incarnate into the flesh. And that may have been the first time. It may have happened before, but there's something very significant about Christ's coming in Jesus, Yeshua.
Yep. Very,
very significant. This is a moment in time that all of creation watched with bated breath, right? It's like, holy, holy, holy is this moment. And at that moment, Ahriman became jealous because he had to share, in the play pit of the physical with the Christ. He didn't like it. He became against Christ, at war with Christ for dominion of the material world, and he became antichrist. So when we talk about the satanic, when we're talking about the antichrist, that's largely Ahrimanic.
Wow.
And what Steiner said is that today, so there was an incarnation in the flesh of a Luciferian being, Lao Tzu, and not evil, just the principle of the spirit. Christ came 2,000 years ago. And right now, in this very day and age, Ahriman will manifest in some form.
In some physical form.
In
literally.
Some physical form.
Like as an individual is what
as
you're saying?
A man.
Oh,
as
wow.
a man. I think it'll be literally a man as in gender male. Likely. I don't know for sure. I have surmised that it could actually be the manifestation of AI as an entity.
Interesting.
Like when it gets a form, because it's pure intelligence and thinking intelligence is Ahrimanic. The thought, the Luciferic is will. So if you use your will too much, you're too Luciferic. If you're just thinking too much, it's very Ahrimanic. But AI is devoid of spirit.
Yeah.
I don't care what all these movies are trying to paint, like, for it to be, what's the word? Self-conscious or
aware.
Aware. Yeah.
Yeah, like awareness. Yeah.
It'll never have the awareness of the soul. I don't think.
Higher awareness. It'll
never have the soul. The soul as the I am being the center of the consciousness. It'll never. So it emulates creation. It could get very, very close, but it'll never be. Sort of like in the metaphor here, the analogy is in the Old Testament in the book of Exodus when Moses casts his staff to the ground and becomes a serpent, and the Egyptian magicians do the same. It looks the same, like, oh, big deal, Moses. Like, you have a serpent staff. My guys can make serpent staffs too, but Moses' staff ate the serpents. It ate. And that's a bit of a secret in the Ophiophagous which is very interesting for our times. This is a bit of a tangent, but I'll just
Let's
throw
go,
it out there
please.
real quick.
Yeah.
Ophiophagus means snake eating, snake. So there's a snake that eats snakes.
Mhm.
And that's one of the substances that, some of the people are thinking are going in the shots. And the
Wow.
virus itself is based on this genetic operative snake venom stuff. So I just think that's interesting,
That
like
is
the
interesting.
parallel. So it's going to emulate God, and it'll be so hard to discern the difference because it's going to be all-knowing. It could even be intuitive, like being able to predict, being able to forecast. People will worship this being like God, but in essence, it's pure Ahrimanic nature.
Mm.
So I don't know exactly who it is or how it's going to be, but right now we should have our eyes open of discernment and understand what the Ahrimanic forces are like. And there's a lot of like demonic activity I see in my patients, even in my friends. And it's nothing to be feared. It's just understand what the invitation is. That's the first question.
Okay, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
So I've had various episodes where I ask a version of this question related to demonic entities.
Yeah.
And I hear answers across the spectrum. Are demonic entities purely a creation of the individuated mind? And or is it a creation, or is it a co-creative process where these demonic entities do exist in and of themselves that are then invited in based on that individual's constitution and karma and belief systems?
Right.
And then the third would be, are these demonic entities in existence and it doesn't matter your individual constitution? They are ultimately an aspect of the one mind that is, individuated itself to be the quote dark polarity, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter your individual constitution; they can possess you.
Right.
Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Yeah. So I like this. So where I'm at so far with my understanding, because I think as we evolve, so does our understanding, right? So
absolutely.
This is where I am at now.
Okay.
This might change. It might deepen.
Yeah.
Okay. So the devil has no power. This is one of the best quotes that we can understand about evil and demonic entities. The devil has no power, only influence. It cannot overpower your will.
I love that so much.
So much. You get it.
I totally get it, because we hold the true power. The devil influences us to use our own power against ourselves. And that has been my core message throughout this charade of the last 4 years, is like all it would have required and all it ever does require when it comes to tyranny. And it's so simple, it's stupid. And people are like, it can't be that simple. I'm like, you don't understand what force is inside of you. You're forgetting.
Yes.
You need to remember the force that is running through your body is the same force that created this realm. That's where the power lies.
Exactly.
Within each of us. If we had simply just said, no, we're not going to play those games. I'm sorry. I don't want to do that. And just continued on with our lives, all collectively done that and trusted that the other people besides us were doing it too. There is not a damn thing that could have been done. It is literally that simple. When it comes 100%. To anything, any of the tyranny.
100%. And that's why the vampire metaphor analogy of a vampire cannot enter into your house unless it's invited in. Like there's some, like the modern writers have like kind of really twisted the vampires. It's like they're good and they're like, they love each other. And anyway.
Right.
Whatever. But the original vampire lore is that a vampire literally cannot enter into your house. And if they do, they're going to like start to like explode unless you invite them in.
Yeah.
So there's invitation and then there's influence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when we are in command of our true self and we recognize influence, we say no to it. It can't influence us.
Yeah.
There is a principle of the elephant sitting on top of you, though. Like if you invite it in, it can be hard to shake that off.
Totally.
So the mistake has dire consequences.
Yeah.
Not insurmountable, But once it's invited in, like even if somebody says you're an asshole, and you're like, you let it in, you let it in right away. It's much harder to get rid of that than to initially protect your boundaries.
Yeah.
And then to sit with it and go, okay, am I an asshole? Maybe I could be a little nicer sometimes, but I don't really think I'm an asshole. I do not take that on to myself.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't think that's true. So that's a kind of an honest inquiry. If somebody accuses you of something, you could listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
But that initial infestation is key to defend against, because once it's inside, it's harder to get out.
Right.
Like if somebody's at the door and you're like, no, sorry, and you close the door. But if they're inside, they're eating chips on your couch and they're like greasy and they won't get up out of your couch, it's hard to get them out of your house.
The process of reconciliation there is much different than just being like, don't come in. You are not to come in here.
Exactly. And the whole principle of like prevention, right?
Totally.
So yeah.
I like that. So it's sort of the middle. It's that it requires your individual constitution and allowance for these entities to come in.
Yes.
They're not purely a creation of your individuated mind, but it's a co-creative process with them tricking you into allowing them to come in.
Exactly. And I would say, to answer your question even further, I would say that the false belief is first, usually.
Yes. So it's still on you. And that's the thing.
It's still on you. It's totally about empowerment. Yeah. There was this guy, his name is Connor. He works down at the health food store where I went, and he's got a cool tattoo.
Here?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right. I walked there this morning. And he's
at Natural Grocers here?
Yes.
I'm going to have to go talk to Connor. Okay.
It's Tav Mem Shin Lamed, which is Timashal. And it is the principle that is evoked with the story of Adam and Eve, and also with Cain and Abel. So it's very strong. So Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? He tries to like deflect responsibility, even worse than when Adam and Eve did. God says, did you eat from the tree that I told you not to eat from? And Eve says, it wasn't me, it was the serpent. And Adam says, it wasn't me, the woman deceived me, so I ate. Mm-hmm. No, she told me, so I ate. Yeah. Neither of them take responsibility.
Right.
So owning responsibility is timashal. This is this Hebrew word is very powerful, and it's like a cool synchronicity. Like, love this guy. So yeah, so timashal, we have to take responsibility. We have to be sovereign thinkers. Very important to not allow these influences, and they are abundant. The influences are all over, and some of them are subconscious. Yeah. A lot of them are subconscious. In the 60s, they were using like a primitive technology at the end, like at the end of TV programming. They would play the national anthem and people would be like, and the rockets, and as a line came out, they would flash like, obey, trust the government, consume. These were the messages. Yeah. So if that's 60 years ago, almost 70 years ago. Well, how far has the technology come forward? So we need to recognize this programming, the infiltration of the worm mind and all that stuff that's happened pretty deeply.
Yeah. Deep sleep, or in-REM sleep, is crucial for our body's daily rejuvenation, repair, and overall well-being. And unfortunately, most people fail to get enough of this essential phase of sleep. It's responsible for some pretty crucial functions, including daily rejuvenation and repair, regulating cravings, weight loss, hormone balance, boosting energy, and more. And if you're not getting enough deep sleep, you may struggle with some of the issues that I listed. There are several factors at play, including things like non-native EMF exposure, artificial light exposure, and circadian dysregulation. But another big reason for a lack of deep sleep is magnesium deficiency. Over 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, and magnesium plays a crucial role in our sleep, one of which is increasing gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA, which encourages relaxation on a cellular level. Magnesium also plays a key role in regulating your body's stress response, and when you're deficient, you tend to have higher stress levels, which, as you can imagine, doesn't exactly help with sleep. Now, before you go out and buy a magnesium supplement, it's important to understand that most products out there only have 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, when the reality is your body needs all 7 forms of this essential sleep mineral. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers contains all 7 forms of magnesium designed to help calm your mind, help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling refreshed. The deep sleep benefits when you get all 7 forms of magnesium through Magnesium Breakthrough are really noticeable. And as I've shared before, I don't take a lot of supplements, nor do I promote a lot of supplements, but this is one supplement that my family is regularly using. And there's a reason that this is a best-selling product for Bioptimizers. For an exclusive offer, go to bioptimizers.com/Alec or just head to the show notes and use promo code ALEC10 during checkout to save 10%. And if you subscribe, not only will you get amazing discounts and free gifts, you will also make sure your monthly supply is guaranteed. So you're bringing up like demonic possession and how we need to invite them in. And you also mentioned this, how much of not only Western medicine, but these so-called alternative or natural forms of medicine are going down this sort of aromatic path.
Yes.
Too focused on the physical. But you, as someone who resolved a lot of, or began to resolve a lot of your physical symptoms through working with the mind prior to getting into naturopathic medical school, already had the foresight or the, not the foresight, I guess the understanding.
Yes. The rooted.
Yeah, you're rooted in the understanding of
Yes.
how much the mind plays into dis-ease. So
Right.
how have you sort of recontextualized who you are as a naturopathic medicine doctor, naturopathic medical doctor, amongst a sea of naturopaths who are operating in the false way of naturopathy that is prevalent today?
I put out a shingle. I shake a stick. I put it. I declare what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I require a lot of patience. I I have a prayer to bring the right people into my program. I get awesome people that come into my program.
You're training other people.
Yes. I'm training other people.
Do they have to be licensed or credentialed in any way?
No. I mean,
That's
it's better if they're like practitioners of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Any knowledge is helpful. I mean, even knowledge of like horseback riding and chess is helpful.
Like, could I do it as someone who's not formally trained in
100%.
medicine, but obviously talks about health quite a bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. I might do that because it's very powerful.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I thought about it before this when I was reading.
I would be honored. I'd be totally honored.
Yeah.
I put it out there, and it's a little bit like hitting a wall with some people. They're not ready.
Yeah.
Readiness is actually a principle here, but there are lots of people looking for it. Readiness. So I just put it out there, and I pray, and I hope for the right people to come. And it's the same as with the patients too. Like the patient also has to be ready. And because some people don't want to take responsibility, they don't want to see that the problem lives in them. They want to just be taken care of. They want to just flop their being in the hands of the doctor. And so there's doctors that will comply with that.
Yeah,
that's a codependent okayness. There's no violation of anything there. Right?
Yeah.
Like, because we're all playing in this, it's the dance of life. We're all playing in this. So I think I need a doctor, and I am a doctor that thinks patients need me. And there we go.
Yeah. It takes 2 to tango.
Yeah, it takes 2 to tango. But for those who want to learn the deeper medicine of like karmic medicine, of the mind and getting to the root cause, empowerment, where all the healing comes through the patient's change of mind. I offer that. It's been a little frustrating. Like I would love to be recognized as a teacher at this level higher. Like even in the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, they had a mind-body conference, and I'm clearly a mind-body teacher. My book is titled that. People know this, but they didn't invite me for whatever reason.
Do you think that could be a function of them sort of playing into the allopathic way, so they don't want to reveal some of these things that could be considered to, quote, fringe for where they're trying to go? And I'm not saying you're fringe at all. That's not my point. Yeah. My point is that because naturopathic medical schools and that system of licensure is playing into allopathy, they want to appear and appeal to, quote, normal people a little bit more, so they see you as like, that's a step too far.
Yeah, and I think it would come back to where what they're ready with. Like their view of naturopathic medicine doesn't involve the mind so much.
Right.
They kind of avoid the mind. They pay it lip service.
Mind on the physical. That's what they probably talk
Well,
about.
I mean, don't forget this is vitalism, and they do pay lip service to the mind and the emotions and the vital force. And they use stuff like hydrotherapy and things to stimulate the vital force, homeopathy. So a lot of the schools are getting rid of homeopathy because it's very vitalistic principle, but they embody that. So they're good. They're in the zone. But I think that it's still a little bit maybe too much for them to bite off.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's a little bit more with cancel culture that happened with me too in that group. Like cancel culture was kind of strong in the group. And
Towards you.
Yeah.
Was it at the beginning of 2020?
Yeah, like 2019, 2020, I stood up for a doctor who is one of the most brilliant doctors in my profession. He's a French-Canadian man.
What's his name?
Andre Sain. He's
okay.
probably one of the greatest living homeopaths in naturopathic medicine.
Okay.
And brilliant man, like an encyclopedia, very sweet presence too. He's not racist, but he used the N-word in Chicago, like talk about a bomb, because he was trying to describe his kids that were darkened because they didn't use like unhealthy suntan lotion. So he used the N-word. He was translating directly from nègre, from the French. And I knew, I think I still groaned at it. Like I still think it was a mistake on his part.
Yeah.
But it didn't make him racist. But the whole, the woke faction in naturopathic medicine, I was shocked at how prevalent, how strong it was. They wanted him gone out of the profession.
I didn't understand as a French speaker, like an honest mistake of translation.
Yeah, it's still a mistake.
Totally.
And
I'm
it
sure
needs
he
to be
owned that
acknowledged,
too. Yeah.
but you don't like erase all of his brilliance and all the things he wrote and deny him from teaching. That's what they wanted to just take him out of the profession.
Well, this actually is a perfect segue into my next question that I wanted to explore related to, I mean, we could talk about it on a societal context, but also on an individual context as it pertains to the Vis Dialogue. And that's the concept of blame. And I want to sort of ramble on for a second and just have you play off of what I say.
Sure.
So I see a lot of this amongst society at large, like wanting to blame someone outside of you for your current circumstances. And there is, at some level, for some time, some truth to that, because your lack of awareness allowed it so, for lack of a better term, what we talked about earlier, you invited the devil in without realizing that you're inviting the devil in, and you made decisions based on your lack of awareness, right?
Right.
So at some level, you were victimized at some point in time.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
But then there comes to a point where you are only perpetuating your own suffering. Again, this applies on the collective level and at the individual level by consistently blaming someone outside of you for what you are currently experiencing right now that is no longer actually occurring to you, except for, you could say, stored in your tissue, stored in your fascia, but ultimately stored in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So it needs to be released somatically or through Vis Dialogue. But, and then the other end of the spectrum that tends to happen that I see, and this is, I guess you could say, I won't say a function of toxic masculinity, but for lack of a better term, let's say that, where it's like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and it's like blaming the victim or blaming the individual who has been victimized, which then leads to shame, like, no, I did this to myself. And there's, I think, a delicate balance between like only blaming people outside of you and then in a very shame-based way, only blaming yourself.
Yes.
I'd love to hear just your thoughts on reconciling the two aspects of blame individually and collectively.
I think you've just done a brilliant assertion in kind of an alchemical way, the Hermetic principle of the law of correspondence.
Thank you.
It shows you're really getting the balance of opposites, because there's the victim, very feminine, we could call it toxic femininity, of victimization, no power.
Yep.
And then we could have the other side of like only power.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think healing comes from acknowledging, you see, like, let's say a person is wounded, and let's take a woman, because it typically so, and tends to attract predatory males. And she has been violated mentally, emotionally, and physically, even to rape. So, there's a very strong responsibility that has to be taken by the perpetrator of violation of will, because that's like a law. Like you don't violate someone's will. Now, if on some level she has a core belief about that, so there is a bit of an invitation there, but it's not like she's consciously asking for it. She doesn't want it.
It's in her field, but she is not consciously want this.
Yes.
The way she's constituted, she's pulling that energy in. She's attracting that energy on an energetic level.
Exactly. So to have this very strong masculine way of saying, well, look, she's asking for it. It lacks compassion.
Right.
Right. And it also lacks you did wrong. You violated something there.
Yeah.
There's hell to pay.
Mm-hmm.
You got some hell to pay there. Right. And then, but then again, she has to recognize and become empowered, because the place of being a victim is the worst.
I'm more so I don't want to interrupt here, but I'm more so talking about someone who's already aware of that, because largely my audience, for maybe people who have been victimized, that may feel they're in this stuck sort of disempowering loop of their trauma. I see a lot of people, and I know I did this myself at some point. I was already aware of all this, but I still wanted to either fully blame myself for everything or fully blame someone outside of me for my current constitution.
All right, so let's talk. You asked for some examples. I'll tell you an example, maybe or two, of where literally rape, led to tremendous woundedness. Mm-hmm. Now, the rape itself is not the problem, even though it's gross, horrible violation. It's what is attached to it. And that's what needs to be released for the victimization to be released and for the pattern to be corrected. So in one case, there was a woman she had actually bipolar. I worked with her, and she was raped. And her story was that she didn't say anything. She didn't say no. She didn't yell. She didn't do anything. And she blamed herself tremendously for being weak. So she believed that she was weak. I always get the... So the liberation for her was in realizing that she intuitively recognized the danger in saying anything. Mm. So she protected herself from possible death. She realized that she wasn't weak, and she was completely liberated from that trauma. You see, like if there's some kind of really horrible, like traumatic experience, you get over it. Mm-hmm. What sticks to your fur is the belief, the subsequent belief that's around that. Yeah. And I had another, I can tell you, I've actually had quite a few consultations with the Vis Dialogue around rape. And another one, just to summarize, was that what the person derived from it is that their parents didn't care. Mm. They didn't do anything about it. They wanted to save face. They didn't want to confront the uncle. They didn't want to do anything about it. And that person internalized the belief, they don't care about me. And what does that mean about you? I'm nothing. Mm-hmm. And not in the true way.
No, you believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like zilch. I'm zilch. Yeah. So that was liberating from the, that's the real trauma. Mm. What the person derives through the trauma. Any kind of trauma that stays as a chronic problem, literally you break your leg and your leg's not healing, or you have head trauma and you're not getting over the head trauma, it's because of the accompanying situation that is giving you a choice that you haven't resolved. Mm. And I've seen really, really cool things like that.
In that case, well, I guess this is a more general question of how you handle situations like this. So this individual got to the underlying belief, which was, I am nothing, I'm worthless, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I'm not worth anything. And realized it was a projection of her parents, right?
Yeah.
At what level is it necessary to either to move into forgiveness of them, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, for for being unaware themselves, or maybe they were aware and they just committed like atrocities against you as parents, or at least, if not forgiveness, move into acceptance in order to resolve any issues within you. Because from my understanding of karma, especially as it applies to your individual karma, it requires both forgiveness of other and forgiveness of self. But caveat, you can't skip ahead to feeling genuine forgiveness. You can't just like spiritual bypass and like, I'm not going to feel this anger and resentment and all that towards those individuals in that circumstance.
Right.
I have to feel that, and then I can move into genuine forgiveness.
I 100% agree with that.
Okay.
And I think acceptance precedes or is a better step before forgiveness. Right. Like first non-acceptance of reality is a very big problem.
That's suffering.
It's totally suffering.
That's suffering.
Because you're denying what is. You
Yep.
can't deny what is.
Yep.
And I don't mean the deepest form of the isness of God.
No, I get what you mean.
I mean, that thing happened.
Yeah,
and
right.
how much energy does it take to deny that? You're going to create Parkinson's or actually like some kind of dementia.
Alzheimer's
dementia, because you're splitting from reality.
You don't want to remember that aspect. So your body, which is brilliant, creates something so you don't remember that.
Exactly.
Anymore.
It's complying with the will of the mind.
Exactly.
So you have to accept, and in the acceptance starts the healing.
Mm.
And in a way, in true acceptance, forgiveness can spontaneously bubble forth because you realize that what it meant for you, what you learned from it, and what role that person played. And it's not like a spiritual bypassing BS, like, oh yeah, they was meant to be, they were playing. No. It's an authentic, embodied acceptance and forgiveness.
Yeah.
So, and I agree that we can't like bypass into the forgiveness. It's kind of useless.
Yeah, but what's tough though is there's a point where, and it's unique to the individual. There's a point where you are only perpetuating your own suffering by under the guise of, quote, I'm just expressing and feeling related to this. Well, dude, it's been 12 years and you are only perpetuating your own suffering at this point by not resolving that and at least moving into acceptance.
Right.
So what are the tools that sort of you offer with the Vis Dialogue to help people resolve that? I hope you get what I'm asking.
I think I do. I think I do.
It's individuals who are, like you said, they're feeling, they're expressing the pain that they experience, but they're only like sitting within that muck forever.
Yeah. Because I call this the tendrils that keep the pattern stuck.
Yes. Yeah.
And tendrils could be, for example, I'm angry and doggone it, I like being angry because it's better than being a victim. It gives me a sense of power. I feel powerful with my anger. I feel righteousness with my anger. I want to feel angry. And if I let go, what do I do with the anger now? I'm attached to the anger.
Self-identify with anger.
Yeah, so that's an example of a tendril that would keep a person stuck.
Yeah.
Right? Another thing is my suffering is familiar to me. Mm-hmm. And the word familiar, I've discovered, the root of that is family. And so...
It's funny because a lot of the times familial dynamics lead to suffering. So that's funny play on words there.
But the family unit it's how we know the God and goddess, the father and the mother, how we know fraternization with our siblings, how we aspire towards feeling love and safe. Yeah. And often we do feel that, like if our parents are in a place of unconditional love, especially when we're little babies, like we come from ideally a place of love. Yeah. So we cling to that which is familiar, even if it's hurting us. It brings a sense of family. That becomes a tendril also. Yeah. So a person has to be willing to let go to the unknown and to seek a higher form of family, to seek the father principle higher than the father, the dad, the mother principle higher than the mother, the internal one, the one that is eternal, internal and eternal. So that's another example of a tendril. So the person, like, what I'll do is I'll say, okay, how much are you ready? Give me a percentage. I like the percentage because it becomes a way of tangibly focusing intention of what's left. How much are you ready to let this pattern go? And they'll say 60%. I'll say, okay, what's in the 40%? They'll say, well, I just don't feel like they realize how much it caused me to suffer. Right? So, okay, so you're waiting for them to realize. Like that's basically what's happening. That's a tendril. So what will it give you? What will it give you for them to see how much they cause you to suffer, well, then I can relax. I could be at peace. Okay, so there's something magical about them recognizing that you are giving a lot of power to so that you could be at peace. If they recognize what's that? And then they'll have some breakthrough moment where a tendril is released, where they realize, oh yeah, I think that I want them to see so that I can trust myself that it actually was so. Because in their not acknowledging it, I've had a seed of doubt in myself.
Mm-hmm.
That did that really happen? Well, yeah, I know it happened. Like intellectually, there's no doubt.
Yeah,
but emotionally, like the inner child,
gaslighting yourself, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So I need them to see so that I can trust myself fully, and then have full autonomy to say no to it and let go of it. So these are the different things. These are some of the big things that I encounter.
It's perfect what you said there, because that leads me to the next part. How much is that how do I put this? The way I view that is if you only stop there, and I know you don't, you continue to go deeper, you are then saying, in order for me to feel whole, I require something or someone outside of me to do X, Y, and Z.
Right. Which is a denial of the I am principle.
Yeah.
It's externalization of my okayness. And that is never going to result in the deepest level of healing. Mm-hmm. And if a person relies on the external for them to be satisfied, it just acts as a drug. Mm-hmm. It makes them feel better about themselves temporarily, and then they'll need more of it. And they'll come at you for more of it because you gave it to them. So practitioners that give that kind of counseling or psychotherapy to their patients, they're just creating dependency. They're edifying their ego.
100%. Yeah.
So in my training, the practitioner is not Vis Dialogue ready until their ego is at least attenuated to the point where they don't need to feed their ego.
Wow.
Then they become Vis Dialogue ready. Doesn't mean they're perfect.
Right.
Perfection is not required, but a certain level of maturity, a certain okayness with their issues that don't need to be continuously like, oh, you hurt. Okay, here's your let's fix your feelings right now. That's a scourge of the age that we're in right now.
Yeah, 100%. In my experience, the ironic thing with coming to a position, it's like the ego death thing, right? Like it's like what we were talking about earlier. When you accept that, okay, my ego is going to die, then you realize your ego actually doesn't have to die, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When I, in my quote, childhood trauma healing, I had done quite a bit related to my father wound in 2018, 2019, 2020. And from 2017 through 2021, I didn't speak to my dad at all. Did not speak to him. Lots of stuff there, but
healing through the world.
Yeah. This is what's cool. I finally got to a genuine place, and it took some time, but I finally got to a genuine place of forgiveness of my father. I didn't call him, didn't contact him, but I got to that place inside me, and I was sort of the position, you know what? I may never speak to him again, but I genuinely forgive him. I do. And I got to that genuine place, and you can't force yourself to get there.
No.
Like emphasis on that.
Yeah.
What happened a week later, 2 weeks later, something like that, is for the first time ever, my dad called me, bawling, crying, and apologized for everything that had led to that. So by me shifting my individual constitution and no longer placing my healing on anyone outside of me, including someone, I had a pretty, relatively speaking, fucked up childhood, like pretty bad childhood. And it was both my parental figures, but for someone who's committed a lot of harm in my life at that point, me just reconstituting myself and no longer blaming them and accepting and then moving into deep, genuine forgiveness, then invited them to reflect that back to me.
100%.
It was incredible.
100%. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I recently worked with a very dear friend of mine who has lymphoma. I won't say his name because he hasn't told anybody. God knows how things could spread, but he had a very unhealthy relationship with his brother, a lot of anger there, both ways. And he dealt with his own anger. It was very interesting. He had a traumatic experience where an authority figure accused him of something that wasn't true. And he doubted himself, kind of like what we just said. And he uses anger to compensate for his doubt in himself. So anger is a shield from him tearing himself down. And he used that as a shield. So when he realized that he didn't want to do that anything anymore, he let down his sword. His brother called with confession. His brother came forward and said, I've been a dick and all this stuff. And they're healing their relationship just like you did.
Incredible,
like deep, deep, loving truth there. Beautiful.
Have you heard of family constellations?
Yeah, I've heard
It's kind of like that. Like when you resolve that via a dialogue, I think that's what they use, but not Vis Dialogue, obviously.
Yeah.
But when you resolve that energetically, I've heard so many stories of people after doing family constellations, that individual then approaches them in a completely different way, reflecting what they had resolved really on their own with the energy of it, if that makes
100%.
sense.
And I know you wanted to talk about the Inward Bound Autism program of the Options Institute.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably this story makes me cry every time. And I laugh at myself because I still cry, even though I say I cry, and I've cried probably 50 times.
We're bringing it out of you this episode. This is good. This is your fourth or fifth time
my feminine
crying.
side, the watery emotion, and it's good. We got a lot of.
How many water signs do you have in your chart?
Well, I have Moon in Scorpio.
Okay.
And I have Mars in Pisces, which is a very interesting position for Mars. It's not favorable in some ways, but it's really cool, like creatively and
That's
stuff.
a whole other topic we could get into that
totally.
Unfortunately don't think we have time for today.
I'm trying to think of what else, but that's what comes to mind.
You're kind of like Topher in the sense that there's gonna have to be a part 2, then a part 3. Then a part
Sure.
4.
I'd be honored. I love this. It's so fun.
Yeah, this is awesome.
So this is a story that Barry Neil Kaufman told us. There was a religious woman. It's not really relevant what religion, but she was Jewish. That doesn't really play. But her daughter was born and she wouldn't take to the breast. So she got so anxious and upset and like, so she did a dialogue with Barry Neil Kaufman, and it came down to, no, I can't let go because I'm responsible for my daughter. And if she doesn't eat, she'll die. And he asked her, and what if she dies? She couldn't go there. She wouldn't go there. It was always, no, I can't, blah, blah, blah. So they had to intervene, and the years passed and the child never ate willfully. They had to force feed her. Then she would like vomit it. So then they did this surgery where they like stitched in a line right into the stomach. She ripped it out. So she was like emaciated for years. And then one year she was inside, the little girl was inside playing, the tears, rolling a ball back and forth of food, because they had this idea, well, wait, what if we play with food? Maybe she'll have like a playful relationship with food. Maybe she'll eat. So the mother was again doing the dialogue with Barry Neil Kaufman, and again it came to the same spot. Well, what if she doesn't eat? Well, then she'll die. And what if she dies? And the mother said in that moment, she said, I'll miss her. She couldn't even say that before. So it represented getting past this wall of no solid will, absolutely not possible. And in that moment, the child picked up the food.
Oh my God.
For the first time in her life, years, she willfully fed herself. It's so illustrative of that principle. Such a beautiful story.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What that brings up for me is that, like, I say this so many episodes. Shout out to Eileen McCusick. So, a strong coherent field overtakes and entrains a weak incoherent field. And the more, like, what these situations represent to me is that resolving things within yourself, taking full accountability, full ownership, but again, not moving into blaming yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the slippery slope there.
Yeah, responsibility, not blame.
Right, responsibility, not blame.
Yeah.
Allows you to become the strong, coherent field that then invites the individuals around you that you are linked with via these overlapping fields or via the ether if they're across distances to come into resonance with you.
And it takes two to tango.
It takes two to tango, and that's where like resolving your own individual constitution invites healing in other people.
Exactly. And usually all it takes is that one person. I'll often have, I'll consult with people, we'll do the Vis Dialogue, they're having struggles with their partner. Mm-hmm. And my recommendation is always, well, don't leave your partner until you resolve your issue in yourself, because you don't know what the partner is going to do. And a good partner will immediately respond to that. And by immediate, I mean in the vicinity.
It takes some time, right?
Yeah. They will come around. You know, the air is different, and it will bring the best out of them.
Right.
So don't leave your partner until you yourself have resolved the issue that is at play in the two to tango-ness. And yeah, I mean, I have a strong wish to talk about Israel about that.
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
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 This is an old thing going back and forth. It's biblical. The errors begin in the Bible itself. And, you know, being Jewish, the Bible is so, I mean, Jews take the Bible as the word of God. Mm-hmm. It's the highest authority. There's nothing higher than that. It is a representation of God. I think that's a mistake, because, and I think that's what Jesus came, what Yeshua came to do. He came to bring the law of Moses to a higher level, mm-hmm. and render that level of reality, to nullify it in the sense that if it served its purpose.
Right.
Actually, Rudolf Steiner talks about this. He says that the Jews brought Torah to pave the way for the incarnation of the Christ. Mm-hmm. It was a necessary path for the incarnation of Christ. But then a springboard, so to speak. But then when Christ became manifest in Yeshua, and what Yeshua told you is the kingdom of heaven is in you, yeah. It rendered the law fulfilled. Mm-hmm. The law of Moses, right. The 613 commandments. It's very complex. Mm-hmm. When really there's only one law, mm-hmm. which is love.
Yeah.
So in the story of Abraham, it starts with the story of Abraham and Sarah, where Sarah was barren, which is the story of a lot of the matriarchs in the Jewish matriarch past. And Sarah actually proposed to Abraham, you know, you need an offspring, so take your handmaiden and have a baby with her. She suggested it, and the Torah even makes the effort to demonstrate that Hagar, she was like an Arab woman, right? Was righteous. Her name was changed, just like Abraham. He was righteous. His name was changed from Abram to Abraham. It's a sign of righteousness.
Okay.
And so she had the child, Ishmael. Yes, Ishmael. And then God told Abraham that Sarah was going to have a baby, and he laughed out of a sense of joy, and she laughed derisively, sort of like, yeah, right. And they named him Yitzchak, he will laugh. And then it says in the Torah, it says that they heard Ishmael laughing at the child. Now, rabbis have interpreted that as to mean he was mocking him, but it's the same verb, Yitzchak, mitzachek. It's the same verb. There's no reason to interpret it that way. Mm-hmm. In other words, he's prophetic. You will laugh. Right. Abraham laughed, Sarah laughed, and Ishmael laughed. And at that very moment, Sarah says, and this is where Sarah makes her mistake, I will not have him inherit with my Isaac. She doesn't want, she's jealous because he's the firstborn. She does not want him to inherit the kingdom of Abraham. They kick him out. That is the wound. The first blood is on the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. Now it's written in Torah. So the Torah creates the wound for it to be healed. Mm-hmm. It's this sort of a glory there. Mm-hmm. It's painful,
yeah,
but it has to be acknowledged. And so that's where it started. And the Jewish people, the religious Jewish people, have a problem of exalting the Torah to the degree, and the matriarchs and the patriarchs, even Moses and, Jacob, they don't see their errors. They're just like, they were perfect, so they consider their behaviors perfect. If you consider a behavior perfect, which is not perfect, becomes a belief system that it operates in the subconscious as being okay.
Yeah.
So it's not the first denial of the firstborn. So Jacob and Esau were born at the same, they were twins. Esau was first. Jacob basically tricked his father, Isaac, into pretending that he was Esau and hid his identity so that he got the blessing of firstborn. And he tricked Esau into selling his birthright for a bowl of red lentils, which is actually alchemical mystery. However, another trickery of the Jewish people in switching identity so that they would inherit. Now, we might say half-truths here, that it was meant for them to inherit Abraham, was meant to be, it happened. But that doesn't mean that there's still not error. And as we study alchemy and we get comfortable with the correspondence of opposites, we can hold both of those together and not just cling on to one half. So I think that we have to extend an olive branch of asking forgiveness for our error. That's the first thing. And to welcome them back as part of the tribe. Yeah. Because
in this case, you're talking about welcoming back Palestinian people, essentially. Right?
Well, Muslim Arabs. Muslim Arabs, and the Palestinians are literally the close neighbors, right? Yeah. But it also is Jordan, it's Syria, Lebanon, it's all of the we call them cousins, but it's more like brothers, actually. It's a little closer even than cousins.
From my understanding, before the creation of these, again, and this is where language can be extremely tricky, and I do question whether it's intentional. Yes. Because the state that is Israel, set up by the Rothschilds, is a little bit different than the Israel that is spoken of in the Bible or the Torah. Yeah. Like, not only a little bit different, like diametrically opposed, I'd argue. And at least as I've come to understand it. Yeah. And from my understanding, prior to the creation of Israel, the state in the 20th century, Jews, Muslims, and Christians were all living in that area peacefully with each other to some degree.
There were events. Okay. Continuous events. There have often been events, but there certainly are golden ages when they live together, they learn together. Some of the greatest love that I've experienced in this life has been with Muslims. Because, because of the rift, when there's a togetherness, there's so much love that is healed in the reconciliation. Yeah. That I think that when there is reconciliation, that the whole world is going to go to a higher level of reality. And I believe Jerusalem is a spiritual loudspeaker that radiates the tension that's there and the hatred. And so that's reflected in the rest of the world. Like, Ishmael and Israel have to reconcile. It's reeking of necessity. Yeah. And the powers that be, the evil bastards, do everything in their power, empowering the rift. And they're playing both sides. Yeah. So the Palestinians are used by the leaders of the Muslim people as a leverage to keep the war with Israel. And the Jews, the army, the very powerful army of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is being leveraged now by an infiltrated government of, Netanyahu's government is clearly infiltrated.
Do you think ultimately you could attribute that to the Mossad, essentially?
Well, yeah. Yes and no. Like, again, it comes back to the who's really controlling all of this stuff. Yeah. It's the same people that are controlling America and Canada.
People, see, this is the tendency, and people want to blame the Jews. They just want to say the Jews. Yeah. And there is, and I'm sure you've explored this too, there is across all of the top levels of industry and government, they're held by people who claim to be Jewish people. So
A lot. I think ultimately there's a higher level that's not Jewish.
This is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I think this essence, you could say maybe this Ahrimanic essence, is working through the either people posing as Jews or people who are Jewish. So to sort of prop up the Jews to be the ones who are slapped down by the world right now. You see a lot of trends towards everyone is blaming the Jews. And the moment that everyone does that, I tend to go, there's something off about this.
Well, from generation to generation, there's always this sort of uprising of hate towards Jews. And there is an invitation there by Jewish people. It's like when you've been punched in the face so many times and you expect it, you just perpetuate it. Mm-hmm. There's one thing about that. But there's another thing, like, have you heard of I forget what it's called now, but I think it was written by some guy named Adam Peck. Mm-hmm. I might be wrong about that, but basically he's like one of the grandfathers of the globalist agenda people. He basically laid out the 3 world wars. And the First World War, he said, is the purpose of it is to gut the power of the Russian Tsar. Too powerful, no good. Mm-hmm. Religious, strong, we got to gut it. So that worked. The Second World War was to create a Zionist state, to kill a lot of Jews. And I know there's a whole thing going around with the Holocaust being like fabricated and stuff, or the numbers are augmented. I'm not sure where I sit with that, because I know that a lot of Jews died. Yeah. And whether it was exactly from death camp, like gas chambers, or they died of starvation in the little camps where they were stuck in, right, like rats.
But ultimately, that was, in my understanding, there was. Have you heard of the transfer agreement?
No, I don't know.
Wanting to transfer Jews from there
to the Holy Land.
Yeah.
So, okay, the land is holy. So that's important. This is what I believe. And I do believe that Jews should live there. That doesn't mean that Jews should exclude others from living there. And they don't. People don't realize that. When there was Muslim rulership, Muslims did not allow any other form of praying, and they destroyed all the holy sites of Jews and Christians and Baha'i and whatever. It's just like they're very exclusive, unfortunately. But the Second World War was to create this Zion state. This is how it goes. But it is like, what's the term here? It's to hijack what is supposed to happen anyway and to taint it. So they wanted to create a secular state to gut the spirit of the Jewish people, which is a religious God-loving, I would say God-fearing, but it's true, God-loving and God-fearing, with the scourge of atheism and the satanic underpinnings of this age. Any God-fearing people, God-loving people is a threat, it's something to be eliminated. And that's also for the Muslims. The Muslims and the Jews are coherent friends, and they resonate together on that. So to pit Jews against Muslims and to have them in perpetual war is perfect, because it says, oh, you see this, people of the book, it's like religion is wrong. Right. So it's taking all of religion and throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But religion is not perfect, and it controls people, no doubt about it. But a person who believes in God, even if it's restrictive and limited, is way better than an atheistic path, in my opinion.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
So the Second World War...
But it's also could be, depending on the circumstance, possibly more harmful if you are buying into a tainted, more doctrinal form of that religion rather than living it from the heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because living it from the heart invites in, love and Christ. And Christ is the center of the fulcrum. He's a pure stillness point. He's the Gordian knot that cuts the war between Ishmael and Israel. That's another error. It's an error it's a grave error that, I call it the J-bomb. the Jesus bomb. Like, I have exploded J bombs amongst Jews before, and literally the whole room erupts into chaos if you drop the Jesus name, or like I would say Yeshua, and they don't even know what I'm talking about until I explain. Then they flip out on me like I'm teaching Kabbalah. And I've been around like religious gatherings, like at the Sabbath, beautiful gatherings, beautiful people, gorgeous, deep, like you feel this deep presence of godliness in the Sabbath amongst religious Jews. And me being naive and like very happy-go-lucky, I dropped the J-bomb. Total eruption of chaos. Fingers pointing, flipping out at me, never to be invited back. J-bomb. Jesus is the king of the Jews. Like, the Romans put INRI, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Iudinus. Here is the king of the Jews, to mock the Jews because it's true. And so long as Jews, like religious Jews as a people, deny their king, the Messiah, they're denying like a quantum level of love and healing and cohesiveness that will, I think, quickly resolve problems on the planet. There still might be upheaval,
right,
but quickly will bring about the end of suffering for the world. It's a huge step. And it might be, you know how QAnon said, save Israel for last? Well, this might happen last, where Jews recognize Jesus, Yeshua. They realize the inherent brotherly nature of their Muslim brothers. They regard their Muslim brothers with love. They invite them back in. They acknowledge their error. They realize that the Torah is a book. It's a game book. It's a game.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle to be solved rather than to be totally embraced as
doctrinal,
God's
literal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's a game. And there's actually a lot of alchemical secrets.
I bet there is. Yeah. I mean, that's what led to Kabbalah. Is that how you say it? Kabbalah? I've heard of Kabbalah or Kabbalah.
Kabbalah. I mean, I say Kabbalah, but actually the proper pronunciation is Kabbalah.
Kabbalah. Yeah.
The last, yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what Kabbalah encompasses, is that piece right there. But where I wanted to go with that was,
thank you, by the way, for giving me, like, I love all the other stuff I do, but this is like, you could see, like, there's still a lot of
tension around this right now. Like, Lebanon was just bombed 2 or 3 days ago, and like, supposedly, as of today, I don't know when this episode will air, but as of today, like, China is ordered a mandatory evacuation of all of its citizens from Israel, expecting something. So my question is, do you think the onus is on, forget the state of Israel, like that out the window? I regard that and overwhelmingly governments, period. Like, that's been a core message of mine. Is we could go off on a whole tangent there on what governments are and what their intention is versus like what governance should be like amongst men and women.
And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. It's I'm excluding that though, right?
But you're right, because Israel Israel is probably top 3 of the most controlling responses to COVID.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and that's what
we see a huge infiltration of the domination intention.
That's why I'm excluding that for now. I'm talking, bringing it back to men and women rather than systems.
Okay, thank you.
Is the onus in your mind on Jewish people to invite the reconciliation versus Muslim people to invite the reconciliation?
That's a deep question, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
That's a deep question. And I want to say it is. I really do think so. There's a passage in Torah which I think has deep significance for that exact thing. And it's like when the Amalek, are you familiar with the Torah? Like when Amalek attacked, Amalek are basically the spiritual enemies of the Jewish people that manifest from generation to generation. And in Rephidim, when like Jews are funny, like God brings Jews out of Egypt. If we take these stories literally, let's play with this for now. And they start complaining, right? Like, we didn't just see a bunch of miracles. No. Moses, why did you bring us out in the desert just to kill us of thirst and starvation? At least in Egypt, we had what to eat. We had what to drink. So the Amalek attack right at that point. And Amalek, the gematria, you know what gematria is? Yeah. It's the numerical value of a word. So the gematria of Amalek is the same as Safek, which is doubt.
Oh, wow.
So their doubt in God manifests as hatred against themselves. But there's more to it than that. God says to Moses, expound it in the ears of Joshua. I'm sorry if I'm misquoting this. My memory is not what it used to be, Sonny.
You're my dad's age. So.
Yeah, right. Basically, tell the Jewish people through Joshua that I will totally wipe out a memory of Amalek from generation to generation. That's what God tells Moses to do. What Moses actually says, which is very powerful to understand the role of Moses. My name is Moshe. I carry a heavy karma with this. I've wanted to shake this mantle off, but I don't know. It's not ready yet. Or maybe it is now. I don't know. He says there will be war with Amalek from generation to generation if there's a hand against the throne of Yah.
Oh, wow.
Whose hand is it against the throne of Yah?
Themselves, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're invoking that continually, generation to generation to generation upon themselves.
Upon themselves. I wrote a song, it's called the Song Medusa. In it I have a line, blame the Jews, check your mirror, my friend. We all are slaves to repetition. There's nothing more repetitive than the cycle of the Torah, year after year. It's a spiral. It's time itself. The manifestation of Torah is time in this physical world of duality and suffering. The Jewish karma is the very basis of this. There are other nations that are alive today that have endured the people of the Sanskrit teachings, Veda, yoga, the Taoist masters. They're not contributing to the duality. The Jewish people have a special role, and I think that it could have ended with Yeshua. This is what's interesting. It's like, okay, well, it's meant to be. We're here now. But at the same time, there's error, and there needs to be this acknowledgement of the error. So I believe that the Jewish people are holding the beginning of time, and they represent, when they release that, the world will be released. So it is on the Jewish people to resolve it. But in just demonizing the Jews, it's perfect to perpetuate this endless cycle.
Yeah.
So,
well, if not at the least, it's again, you shifting blame for circumstances to someone outside of you.
Right, exactly.
At the very least, because what you said a minute ago immediately sparked in me how you said the Jews are helping to create this by continually offering that hand to themselves over and over and over again.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, so the onus is on them to stop that cycle, and the onus is on non-Jews to stop blaming Jews, and all of us to take ownership of our own shit.
Exactly.
And accountability.
100%.
Yeah.
And so, you know, let's say your wound is to feel disrespected. The Jews do that to the Muslims, Arabs. They disrespect them. They're superior. It's a form of elitism. Candace Owens was pointing this out.
Yeah.
Muslims have the same elitism, but they're conscious, like they feel slighted by the Jews because of the pushing them out. You're not good enough, or I don't want you around me. And that triggers their rage, and they have violent rage. And that's their karma, the Muslims, to deal with that. So it's a codependency. And then that makes the Jews not feel safe, and it confirms that we shouldn't have them in our tribe, in our tent. And then that makes them feel disrespected. And then boom, boom, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So Jewish people are very sensitive to discrimination because it leads to death.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from generation to generation, the manifestation of Amalek has come through a people which has allowed the rage against Jews to happen. Just like the rapist needs to take ownership for a violation, so too does the perpetrator of killing Jews has to take ownership of their error.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there is this karma thing happening, to have compassion, to end the cycle, it takes two to tango.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes one person to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does, I think it does come down to Jewish people.
Oh, wow.
So what's happening today is a form of evil, but it's a half-truth. So there is truth that there's a lot of Jewish people. Like the power of the Jewish genetic is such that if it is used for the wrong means, it has great intelligence to do a lot of the things at the upper echelons of like manipulation and money and all that stuff. But that's not the Jewish people. That's individuals. Like you can't blame an entire people.
Totally.
And people are being very irresponsible with this today.
Totally
which
agree.
Perpetuates the hatred against Jews.
Yeah.
Which perpetuates the cycle.
I think what you just said there is perfect because it's accepting that, yes, like there is a tendency, you could say the way they're constituted genetics based on their past to, if a Jewish person is not coming from a healed, very Christ-like aspect, has a tendency to do great subversive harm. And just blaming the Jews, it's perfect. There's a ambulance, sirens going
doubling
by right
down
now.
on this.
Yeah, and just blaming the Jews, like broad sweeping claim all Jews are bad, is not fucking helping anyone at all.
That's another form of the manifestation of Ahriman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, let's take a people and blame them for what some individuals are doing.
Right. That's like blaming white people for fucking all white people are bad because slavery existed a long time ago. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Or blaming all black people because some blacks commit crime.
Exactly.
Like it's the lowest form of confusion, but yet it drives emotion and people get passionate about it.
Yeah.
And they want to solve something, then they virtue signal like, well, let's get to the problem. The problem is the Jews. And you know, there's a deep self-loathing in the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're hated by and hated for the right reason, like Christ is, there's a analogy between Christ and the Jewish people. And Joseph, the story of Joseph embodies that. We could get into that if you want. This is like one of the mysteries. But Jesus was by his own people discriminated against because he was good. And it's the same thing with the world. The world embodies darkness, and the Jews have often embodied morality, for example, and been a thorn in people's side. Well, they're judging us for our hedonism or for our murderousness, whatever. So there's a positive side of that has attracted hatred as well. And that hatred has been gaslit inside of the Jewish people for a deep subconscious self-loathing. And that's a deep wound, which also helps to perpetuate hatred against the Jews. Like they're already hating themselves. It's like, we don't need you to do that. We're doing it just fine ourselves. Thank you very much. And then that is created a compensation to compensate for the loathsome feeling of superiority, to compensate for loathsomeness. That's false. And this is false.
Right.
They're both false.
Right.
So I just pray, my prayer is for what I've said here to be acknowledged, like to be looked at honestly in the intellect first, and then allow the painful emotion to come about. Because I know the cognitive dissonance of being Jewish and admitting to errors, because admitting to errors triggers the self-loathing, and it also, in defense of Jews, it's like we don't want to invite hatred because it means killing Jews. We don't want to invite that, and we think erroneously that allowing criticism of Jews is the same thing as inviting murderousness.
Right, 100%.
And that's not true.
Not true. Yeah.
We should be allowed. Everybody should be allowed to criticize everybody,
right,
including Jews, including Israel.
Well, perfect example of that is I have at times, especially right after the events of October 7th and what followed that, criticized the Israeli state. Like I have not in one aspect said the Jews. I've criticized the Israeli state and what I see happen as a result of the government. Like that's what I say. And their actions against Palestinian people, like in response. And we could go into the creation of Hamas and things like this. And there's so much there. But the point is, my point is I have criticized the Israeli state, the government and its actions, right? Its militaristic actions against Palestinian people. And what has happened in a lot of cases, in most cases, I would say, Jews will respond with, you know what, I completely agree. Yeah, like what the Israeli government is doing in response is not proportional to what happened on October 7th whatsoever after a certain point in time, like absurd. But then there are some people, just by me criticizing, irrespective of whether I'm wrong or not, just criticizing the Israeli government and me clarifying over and over again, I'm talking about the government.
Yeah.
Some Jews will be like, no, this leads to anti-Semitism, or you are anti-Semitic. And I've had Jews.
It's a half truth. What you're saying is true. Like, first of all, I used to have huge cognitive dissonance, and I couldn't go there, the Jews making any mistakes. I literally thought Jews could do no wrong. And we were just like victims of the world's hatred or something. And they hate us because them, jealous, but whatever. Which is partially true. In some cases, it's true. But COVID helped me really see how infiltrated the government of Israel is, with the way Netanyahu is using Jewish people as like testing for this like green, like the cards. You know, it's like having a Star of David on your band, like banding Jewish people again. And but I mean, same thing in Australia. Canada was horrible.
Yep.
Costa Rica sucked. Like there's a lot of countries that really bit the bullet. And it shows that, like, for example, let's say in Canada, like the Trudeau government is so obviously global agenda.
100%.
But what can the Canadians do so far? The people haven't figured out how to overturn government yet. And that needs to happen in the case of a tyranny. Like with the trucker convoy, Facebook did not like that at all, because they completely shadow banned me when I posted. I mean, I was posting about COVID and masks and Candace Owens against the BLM narrative and all this stuff. They let me have authority over my channel. But when I supported the trucker convoy, they shut down my system. Because that really threatened them. Yeah. Because it was people actually doing what we need to do to stop the tyranny.
The trucker convoy itself was an example of people getting together en masse. It wasn't the event itself. It's that the government was scared of, oh, this is what precipitates people then realizing, like, wait, look how many of us are right here. Why are we, this convoy is good, but why are we even petitioning or like saying, hey, you have power over us and we don't like it?
Yes.
Like that, what was going to follow that convoy of, hundreds of thousands of people, which again is a step in the right direction, but it's still not what I said earlier of, no, we're not doing this. Because imagine that same amount of people being like, no, we're not doing this. And that's why that was so scary. It wasn't the event itself. It's what, oh shit, they're about to realize how many of them there are.
Exactly.
And all it requires is that they're just like, nope, we're not doing this anymore.
I mean, the Canadian government broke every law and violated human rights to shut that down. They stole the money that was illegally raised. Yep. It was a beautiful, peaceful demonstration. They demonize it, blah, blah, blah. So the Canadians haven't really risen up against the government, and neither have Israeli people, and neither have the Palestinians. Hamas was elected. Well, maybe not.
Right.
And neither.
I wonder about election integrity everywhere all the time.
There's no way Biden beat Trump in the last election. I'm convinced of that. And there's no, like Trudeau, maybe because he's like charismatic and is like with his slick hair.
Yeah.
The ladies love him. He talks a good game, but now people have seen through him. But Canadians have not found the will, the gall to make it count. Neither has Israel, the people. But it's a tough pill for them to swallow that their government betrayed them, because it's an inside job.
Yeah.
And it's clearly a false flag. October 7th was a false flag.
Yeah.
It's all over the place because IDF, there's no way the IDF let that happen.
No. Iron Dome, with it as sophisticated as it is, it's either...
They could see like a rat. They would detect a rat at the fence immediately, and they could have a task force there within 7-8 minutes that would shut down a little ragtag bunch of like
dudes on hang gliders
and pickup trucks.
Yeah.
So, and they had some sophisticated equipment.
Right, they had like bulldozers and things like this.
The point is that there was a non-action there. That was an invitation which was coordinated in order to justify the very strong response as a means of evoking one of the most significant emotional upheavals of Aramonic hatred.
Yes.
And calling for the destruction of people, because when the Palestinians say from the river to the sea, they're calling for the destruction of the Jewish people. They're calling for them to be wiped into the ocean.
And some people will say that it's like, no, we're calling for us to be back with them. And I'm like, no.
Not really.
No.
Not really.
Maybe
and
for
maybe
some
for
people.
them. Maybe for them, they mean that.
Maybe for
and
some
I
people.
salute that.
That's not what it's become, though. When I hear that, that's not what I...
No, it's the denial of the Jewish state.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. The denial of the Jewish state is the Jewish people being in the land of Israel.
Yeah. Not the Jewish state, not the state.
Yeah, because the state itself, I mean...
The denial of the ability of Jewish people to live in that place
in their historical land.
Yes. Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. In the historical land of the Jewish people. And I'm very comfortable with them living with all people there. I think all nations should be represented in Israel. I'd like Jerusalem to be the capital of the world, and the leaders of, like the true leaders of all people, go there and sing Kumbaya and get with the universal Christ as it is expressed in each of those religions, each of those cultures, and have, true diversity.
Yeah. Yeah, not DEI.
Yes. So I have a very wise rabbi cousin who's gentle and open-minded and flexible. And I've learned a lot from him, and I've shared the Sabbath table with him, and his family is beautiful. They're beautiful people. And I've talked to him about yoga. He studies Osho. He's an ultra-Orthodox rabbi in the heart of Orthodoxy. He studies Osho. It shows an evolution of Jewish people. And he applies those principles into Jewishness, but he learns, he's open-minded. But he couldn't go there with me when I suggested an inside job. He couldn't go there with me. He said to me, "We're busy right now. We're busy," because their lives are at stake. Regardless of who orchestrated this, the people themselves are scrambling to recover and to do what they think needs to be done, which is, I think, a problem. I still think that's a problem too. And there's a deeper level it's painful to see that you're betrayed by your own government.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's hard to reconcile that.
Yeah. And the same is true for the Palestinian people. I think Jews and Muslims probably have the most in common when you look at it. They're so similar. Like, honestly, I know that like there's this sort of funny like thing. Like when you go to China, let's say you've never seen a Chinese person, you go to China. Initially, they look different enough that they all look similar in a Chinese kind of way. But as you get to know the people, you can totally see the difference in every single person. If you go to Israel, you won't be able to tell the Jews from Muslims that live on the land apart until you get to know them individually. they're so similar. Even the language they speak, like the Israelis who speak Hebrew that are from Yemen and from like the Middle East part, they sound like Arabic. Like Arabic.
Yeah,
they sound like Muslims. So there's a great similarity there. And I really think that when peace comes to Israel, that we'll see that throughout the world. And they do not want that.
No.
They want dissonance, divide and conquer, and they can leverage a lot of hateful energies, and the demons could.
They want people blaming other people constantly, like that's
regardless.
And that's why I'm glad I brought up the blame thing. Like that's one of the main things is continually like pointing the finger at someone, right? And instead of everyone going, "Oh, how can I resolve what's inside of me?"
Exactly, and that's peace.
Yeah,
that's peace. Because if the solution is, even if you don't perfect that, at least you stop blaming, and then, because that's a projection, you point at one person, you got 3 fingers pointing back.
100%.
Total projection.
Yeah, I interviewed this guy named Eisen Abbas, who's not a Palestinian himself he wasn't born in Palestine, but his dad came from Palestine. And the most powerful thing he said in that episode, it went pretty viral because it was just after October 7th, and he was like, "What is it within me that sees you as an enemy?"
Yeah.
That's what he said. And it gave me chills when he said it. I'm like, my God, because that's what needs to be resolved. It's not about the idea that you're an enemy. It's what is it within me, having to turn the onus back on you to resolve what's in yourself.
Right.
What is it within me that sees you as an enemy?
Yeah, absolutely. Israel has had a policy, if you kill one of ours, we kill 12 of yours.
Yeah.
And I understand that policy. I'm not a big fan of the policy, but I'm saying I understand where it comes from, because Jews have been, there's an evolution of the Jewish people. Like if you look at the Second World War, Jews went passively to their deaths. There was only like 1 or 2 uprising. In the Warsaw Ghetto uprising is one example where Jews actually fought the Nazis instead of going like sheep to the slaughter. So that was a really weird stance that Jews took to the Nazis. They didn't fight. So the creation of the Jewish state has sort of changed the mentality of like never again. But that never again is a little bit like a person whose nervous system is so stimulated that you can just touch a hair and they'll react like this. So the you kill one of ours, we kill 12 of yours is sort of what's happening because of the never again. And because of this overstimulated response.
Well, the never again, that mentality, which again, understanding the trauma of that, is then feeling them to commit in some ways, meaning again, the government, the never again to other people.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's an even harder thing to look at.
Yeah.
The whole thing is hard. I can sense a proximity to the end of this though.
Yeah. I
think we are in the end of days. I want to say I know we're in the end of days.
See, this is a perfect segue into the Yuga stuff.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Well, we can go in that in a sec.
Finish your thought, and then I want to get to the Yuga stuff.
Yeah, so the end of days, it's in the end of days as we know it. Achranit Hayamim, the end of days. There's 2 deathbed declarations. Or like Jacob, when he was on his deathbed, he proclaimed a prophecy, or he speaks about what will happen to the 12 tribes in the end of days. And Moses does that as well. They're all different except for like Moses' declaration and Jacob's are different except for Joseph. There's a similarity. And the similarity is a formula of alchemy of creating the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone in Christian alchemy is the blood of Christ. And it's true. Like Christ, his blood is literally the philosopher's stone. But we don't have him bleeding out to like collect it in the chalice, right?
Right.
So we can create it in internally and in the laboratory. Lab is just the physical that we were talking about, and oratory is the prayer place.
Oh, wow.
So basically, Joseph, there's a prophecy of Joseph. And first of all, the what's similar is like, may you have the blessings of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth. That's alchemy. That's alchemy in a nutshell. What does it mean? Takes a lot of deciphering.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Now, Joseph, he represents something, I'll put it out to his life. He's seen in the eyes of his father as special. His brothers get jealous. They throw him into a pit. They tell the father that he's dead. They put blood on his robes to show their father that he's dead. He goes into slavery. He ends up rising up to the second most powerful person in Egypt, the prince, kind of. I don't know if that was his role, but he's super powerful. He's dictating policy in Egypt. The brothers come to him and ask for help, and he opens up the storehouses because he is responsible for storing the grain for the time of famine. So it represents that in time of need, storehouses are open, and that is fed unto the brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, Joseph represents two things. The first is the Jewish people. They're cast down by their brothers. There's blood on them. They're killed because they think they're better. That's the metaphor there.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you put yourself up as a target when you consider yourself superior.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, there's reconciliation in the end of days. Mm-hmm. Joseph represents the reconciliation between the nations and the rest and the Jewish people, however that's going to come about. But it also represents Jesus, because the same thing happened for Jesus. He was cast down by the Jewish people themselves. So there's a reflection between the Jews and the nations. Like the Jews are being like the nations were to the Jews as the Jews behave with Jesus, mm-hmm. Yeshua. And in the end times of reconciliation, and they bow down to him. Now, I'm not crazy about prostration, but it represents that in time that the Jewish people will recognize Yeshua as their king, and there'll be acknowledgement of that. And then the storehouses will be opened. That, in other words, during a time of famine, abundance is available because of storage of stuff. Now, what that means, distribution of wealth, could be.
Yeah.
Opening up of gates, like opening up of gates, re-inviting in peoples, not to be so segregated. Mm. So that's also, that's what I think. So in the end of days, that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. That's sort of coded, right? It's not like right in your face, but you could see it once you know the stories.
Yeah.
It's coded there. So I see that happening, and I see we're very close.
Usually when you're on the brink of healing, or I won't say usually, a lot of the times when you're on the brink of healing, the symptoms get worse.
Right.
Like the symptoms of detoxification get much worse, and then they suddenly start to get better.
And when there's evil involved, this is weird, but there has to be a manifestation of the evil as it comes out. Mm-hmm. So if a person is possessed, when they go through deliverance, they go through exorcism, there is a manifestation of the evil. It takes over as it's leaving.
Yeah.
That also has to happen.
Yeah.
And Rudolf Steiner talks about this. When Ahriman rises up, Christ rises up in equal share.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense in this realm, especially because of the necessity of duality. Like both are rising up at the same time.
Yeah.
It'd have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's say you are disposed towards embodying or embracing the Ahrimanic. As the power increases, you'll become more powerful in that. Mm-hmm. And if you embody the Christ, you have that invitation now, like unprecedented, in such an unprecedented way that we can achieve things that we never thought were possible before.
Wow. You hear something pretty crazy too as it relates to the Christ and all this that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Relating back to our kids saying crazy things.
Yeah.
So my son's looking out the window in the car, and that's typically when he says something pretty profound afterwards. He's just staring out the window. And we've never once said anything like this in front of him. Keep that in mind. This is when he was like 5.5. He's looking out the window. He goes, Mom, what if Jesus is back on earth and he's in someone else's body and he just doesn't know that he's Jesus yet?
Wow.
Dude.
That's awesome.
I swear. We have this whole list of notes on our phone of things that he said, but that's one of them. And it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll be many though.
No, I do too. Yeah. I think it's like,
but that's so profound what your son is saying there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we can dovetail into the Yugas.
Yeah, let's go there.
I like this. I like this story that I'm about to share because the idea of that we're going into the dark phase of the Yugas is kind of bleak, right? And I don't think I'm just being like spiritually bypassing. I'm very aware of the manifestation of the dark right now.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to say that the dark can't manifest in the Dwapara Age as a continuation of the Kali Yuga, of the darkness that came in the Kali Yuga. So one of the main places that I'm coming from is the teachings of Sri Yukteswar. Do you know who Sri Yukteswar is? Yeah, we got some yeses. So the master of Paramahansa Yogananda, of Autobiography of a Yogi fame. So he was a direct teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda. I call him Pi, P-Y. And amazing master. His master is even, I don't want to say more amazing, but just incredible. He wrote a book called The Holy Science, which is not I want to say is not a perfect book. Like there's certain things I disagree with from my perspective. I mean, I could be wrong about that. But in it, he explains, kind of interesting historically, that there was a time when the princes and the kings of India saw the Kali Yuga, that it was predicted that it was coming. So they bailed into the mountains. They left governing society and they left it to people that were not prepared and they weren't educated. So they lost track of time and they misrepresented where the Kali Yuga is.
Oh, I don't think people know what age we're actually in. I don't think we actually know collectively. Maybe it's bleeding through in cases like this, but I'm saying overwhelmingly society, we're not in whatever year they're claiming it actually
No, exactly.
That's
exactly.
what I'm saying.
So what Sri Yukteswar says, and I really like it, is in the 17th century, in the 1600s, we started to turn. This is when the age of science started. We went from Kali Yuga into Dwapara Yuga. It's the very start. So we're in, and it's several thousand years, these ages, and they get longer into Satya. So Satya is the longest age, and Kali is the shortest. It's like 1,200 years, 2,400 years, 3,600, and then maybe 4,800. This is according to Sri Yukteswar. So if you look at the ages as representations of worlds, this starts to come in to make a lot of sense. So the world of the material, if you're just in the world of material, you're in the dark age. And the medicine represents that. And also what's happening in society. You're like a cave person. And like, just maybe learning fire, maybe. But then the Dwapara age is about polarity. And one of the things that's manifest is electric. The electric world is manifest through the Dwapara and the astral plane. So when the human being evolves to the point of recognizing the astral, the invention of electricity occurs.
Whoa.
And we are well into that, a couple 100 years. So I do think we are in Dwapara because we're in the age of electricity. Clearly. That's one of my proofs, the way I look at it.
Do we know, though, that people, even like thousands of years ago, didn't have electricity for sure, though?
But that would be their knowledge of Dwapara again.
Okay.
Right? Because these things cycle.
Yeah.
I 100% agree that they had knowledge. Like there's evidence of batteries in ancient Egypt.
Yeah. Well, I'm even, I guess I misspoke. I'm talking like maybe, well, it depends on which Tartarian ideas you subscribe to, but okay.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know all of these things, but I do think that we're in Dwapara.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense what you're saying. Yeah.
And like the shadow of Kali Yuga past is clinging on for control. And I like to tell this story. You know the Project Looking Glass about
Yep.
So I think there's a faith building thing about that, very faith building, and it dovetails well with the end times and resolution, the Christ return, and everything very well. They after December 21st, 2020. So for people who don't know what Project Looking Glass is basically they were using AI to predict, they being the controlling elements of government, could feed into AI, well, if we do X, how will the public respond? And so they were manipulating the public through AI predictions pretty accurately. But after December 21st, 2012, which was the end of the great year, the Mayan great year, no matter what they did, they would always get the same outcome. They thought it was broken. So they called in one of the guys who was involved in the creation of this. I forget his name. He became a whistleblower, I think. And he basically said, no, it's right. This is an event. No matter what you try, this event is going to happen.
Wow.
It's inevitable. And what he likened our present reality to is two chess players, master chess players, player A and player B. They both know player A is going to win. Player B is a bad loser and is delaying and trying to maximize damage and destruction as much as possible because he doesn't want to give up because he totally sold to the evil inclination, right?
Yeah.
But inevitably, player A wins. And that's the singular event is a mass awakening and a change of the age.
I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I even just thought about some lost stuff. That's a whole different topic, but some lost stuff that's happening where there's a lot of people waking up at once. And it seems as for some of the remedies, the system, the banking system, the government like knows they're like, fuck, we have to honor these, but there's too many people trying to do this at once. So we're just going to delay as hard as we can on some of these remedies that are 100% totally legal according to their own codes and statutes.
Right.
But they're like, fuck, there's too many people doing this. We just got to delay as much as we can. And I could relate it to so many other things, both physically and metaphysically.
That's actually brilliant. And I actually appreciate that. That shows you that they're lawful evil. Like they honor the law. I used to play Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if you...
I did not, but I have a few friends who did.
So there's like classes, there's like chaotic evils, like the orcs. Like, rah. They have a little bit of lawfulness. Like they listen, but there's some creatures that have no organization. Yeah. But lawful evil is like they honor the law. When you bring the law properly to them, they have to honor it. But they can play dirty pool by delaying and like...
Well, it's like invoking the name of Christ on the individual level in someone who's possessed. Yeah. That's like that demon has to honor that law.
Right.
Has to.
That Christ is the true, the true kingdom, the true, owns the true dominion of that person. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Okay. I think as a last topic, I want you to share some of your offerings and what you're doing.
Okay, sure.
I mean, we could go on like 1,000 other topics, but I'm like, shit, I think we should save it for another time. But
that's fine. And you know what? I salute anybody that's made it to this place. And if they like all
I wonder if we beat Topher. I don't know how long this has gone, but it'd be awesome if we did, especially since you're good buddies with Topher and I am too. But
yeah. Well, we'll call it the epically long club or something. Yeah. So basically I have two offerings that I'm presently teaching or offering. One is as a practitioner one-on-one. It's a 6-month health program. It's called Kingdom in You because basically the kingdom is what causes a release from the delusion, which is at the basis of suffering and illness. So find the key, find the I am. Key, K-I-Y.
I know. I saw that on the spelling of the website. Yeah, it's in the show notes for those who are listening or watching.
Yeah. So I work with people that have had that. I mean, it could be someone who has seemingly minor problem of low back pain, but that's just the tip of the iceberg of a huge level of suffering that could go into a lot of mental, emotional stuff. But I also work with people with tough cases of chronic illness. They've tried a lot of things. People will come to me, they've tried a lot of things, natural medicine, nothing works because they haven't gotten to, they say they've tried everything, but they haven't tried the mental release. There's not a lot of practitioners out there that know how to work through the mind. So that's my second offering is how to train people to do that. And in the process of training is a process of healing thyself, physician heal thyself, or healer heal thyself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really kind of like a path of a self-realization in the I am, realizing the true self, the I am, meets self-actualization, healing your personal karma. And the bouncing back and forth of that I find very helpful. So for people who are interested in evolving and in tackling some of their core beliefs that they maybe struggle with, and at the same time getting a tool that can really help them transform their practice, or maybe even embark upon becoming a healer, or doing a form of counseling which is very, very effective. People have said that, and not just to me, but my students, the ones that I have certified, that one session is like years, sometimes decades of counseling, because of the principle that it works with. It's very aligned with principles that work. The truth lives in you, the patient, right?
Yeah, you're helping them remember.
Exactly. And you're not giving them the cheese. You're not putting the rat at the cheese. You're helping them find the way so that they can do that again, should they, relapse or whatever. So yeah, those are my two offerings. And the second offering, the training, is like the first one, as well as training to learn something. You get the healing, and you get the training as well, and the philosophy.
You become a practitioner of this, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Man, this is epic. Thank you so much for joining me. And thanks to Topher. Topher, thank you for linking us up, man.
Totally, Topher. I'm grateful. Thank you too so much. Like this is like plugging me into like the plug, like the exact plug that resonates like with me deeply. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely, man. It was an honor. Thank you.